With the tinkle of the sesquicentennial bell, I'll call us to order. We don't have many more weeks to do this. Our sesquicentennial year is drawing to a close, but we sure had a lot of fun yesterday, thanks to Councillor Greenfield's wit and wisdom. I'm going to call our meeting to order and ask that Councillor Uhrig give us our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters, and we extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I just invite you to join me in a moment of silent reflection on today's business. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I just remind you, you can bring it forward if it occurs to you at any time. Announcements. Do we have any announcements around the horseshoe today? Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. It's always great to see a full house here at Council, and I do have a few things that I would just want to run through quickly. We spoke to it at our last meeting, but just a reminder about Evening Fest that's coming up this Saturday at Meaford Hall, November the 9th. It's going to be an evening full of fun and entertainment, and we all need to wear black and white, which is going to be fun. And November the 7th, also this week, is Meaford Dragons, our own Chamber of Commerce, hosting their 16th annual event. And this year, the Dragons are Kathy Parrish, Paul Campbell, Tim Fisher, Chris Hubert, and Amanda Meiji. And the Dragon Slayers are Kyle Clement, Franny Wensley, Tammy Vesely, Olivia Herbert, and Natasha Bell. So 5 contestants vying for over $10,000 in prizes from the Dragons. So do come out and see that if you can. Meaford Hall, 7 o'clock on the 7th. Our Rotary Thrift Shop is in need of donations. So I thought with so many faces here, I would just mention if anyone is cleaning out their closets and you happen to have any fall and winter coats in particular that you might consider donating to the thrift shop, that would be wonderful. And if you know anyone with kids' coats, we're really in need of kids' coats and swims and snowsuits as well. And I just want to end because I think many of you, and Mayor mentioned it already, and thank you, Mayor Kentner, for doing that. Ross was present at the play yesterday, as were many of you in the audience, and I think it'd be very appropriate if we gave Harley a standing ovation for his outstanding 150 years and 125 minutes. Really well done, Harley, and so much fun. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Bell.
Mr. Mayor, it's kind of tough to follow a standing ovation. I'll just take the opportunity today to invite folks to the Remembrance Day Ecumenical Church service at the Meaford and St. Vincent Community Center. It's on Sunday at 10 a.m. and it would be nice if you could take the time and attend that. And I'll just take a further moment to just let folks know for Monday on November the 11th, the form up is a little different than what we've had in the last 2 or 3 years. We have a much larger marching contingent, and we are forming up at the Meaford and St. Vincent Community Center. And with the size of the troops, we likely will be forming up literally on Collingwood Street. Anyone interested in falling in should be at the Meaford and St. Vincent, probably 10 o'clock in the morning would not be out of line. And we plan on stepping off at 10:45 a.m. It's an 8-minute walk to the cenotaph. And please join us on Monday, November the 11th. And It's going to be a very large contingent. And anyway, it's really something special. The 4th Canadian Division really wants to participate, Mr. Mayor, in this municipality, and they're showing that with the strength of marching contingent. Thank you.
I believe that we can look for up to 200 troops to parade, which is very significant for us, and it shows a whole new spirit of cooperation with the 4th Canadian Division Training Center, and I really appreciate the work that the new Lieutenant Colonel Joe Tobin has put into our Remembrance Day ceremony this year. So, anyone else around the horseshoe? Otherwise, I'll hand it over to CAO Kim Buckham.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder to everybody that we have Community Connects tomorrow from 10 till 2 at the Meaford St. Vincent Community Center. So that's where we'll be there. You'll be there. Hoping that we'll get a good turnout of community to come. There'll be some events and some games and prizes, as well as obviously opportunities to talk, tell us how things are going and what they'd like to see. So really looking forward to seeing everybody out.
Okay, anyone else on the other side of the horseshoe? Okay, we'll move on to public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and are limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question, they may do so either in person here at the council chambers or remotely via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or to ask a public question must register in advance with legislative services by 10 in the morning on the day of by contacting the clerk at meaford.ca or calling 519-538-1060 extension 1110. An email with access information will be sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes and public questions to 2 minutes. And just a reminder that the public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel, www.meaford.ca/YouTube. And we do have some presentations and also deputations today. So first, I'd like to ask that we turn the podium mic on and call Judy Prima, who is in person today, to speak to us.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner and the board. I just want to say before I get started, I really enjoyed yesterday's play. I felt like I sat in a 2-hour municipal council meetings, totally different perspective. And though we're not here today talking about rapids being rapid and bringing in 100 gunfighters to address it, I think what you'll find on our presentation today is in line with councillors' top 16 top priorities, strengthening the community and the parks as part of that. So my name is Judy Prima, and I'm here to talk about preserving our harbor beachfront tranquility, which you see up on the screens, how peaceful and beautiful and quiet it is. The grass is not there, but that's okay right now, temporarily. So this clicker this way. Alexandra. This one. Okay. Next slide. So I am representing the Harbor Beachfront community today. I have several of my neighbors in the room with me here today. And who is the beachfront harbor community? We are the local residents living in the direct vicinity of the Skydev development in the David Johnson Park. We live on Bridge Street, Fuller Street, and Boucher Street up to St. Vincent Park. Slide. Understanding why we need to preserve the tranquility of our harbor beachfront. People go to the beach and live in a waterfront community because of the tranquility, the peace, the quiet. And it has been proven scientifically that it offers our well-being for our mental well-being. So it's very important that we do that. And knowing that we're going to be building 168 residential units and 78 hotel units, how do we maintain that tranquility that we have at David Johnson Park? Slide. This is the current rendering of the Skydev project. And you will notice in the very bottom center, we have 2 pickleball courts and a dog park, which I don't think will help the beachfront tranquility that we're currently enjoying. So I just wanted to point out exactly the proximity of that being directly across the street from the residents. Slide, please. So today we're asking for playground and parks and not pickleball and parks. We did send out an email to the counselors last week that was explaining a little more, because I'm finding that unless you're playing pickleball, people don't have an understanding of the noise that the racket and the ball makes. So the first slide, Alexandra, or the first. There was an article that was written by a Canadian lawyer. The pickleball is Canada's fastest growing sport, and it's also the most disruptive. Next. The Toronto Star, particular in Niagara Falls, its noise about pickleball communities object to the sound of the game. Next. CBS News, there was a TV article where several Colorado cities are now dealing with the growing pains from the fastest growing sport in America. Centennial had put a moratorium on new pickleball courts, while Denver has decided to close 4 of the courts, most popular. So this isn't a one person complaining about noise. There's validity to this. And I am a pickleball player. So there is validity to this. And also I included in the email that I'd sent out a connection with respect to Thornbury, our neighbors, our municipality, in which they were going to build a pickleball court right in by the residential area. And they opted in the end to move it because of the disruptiveness out to Tomahawk. So it's not in a residential area. And I'm hoping that we can learn from other municipalities and be proactive. Next. Dog parks. I have to tell you, all the neighbors, everybody has a dog, if not 2. Love dogs. I was speaking with a neighbor down the street who takes her dog for an hour every day to Memorial, beautiful Joe Off-Leash Dog Park, and her dog loves it. Excited, hyper, lots of barking. All the neighbors, all the dogs start barking. And she said, as much as she loves going to a dog park, she does not believe that a dog park should be in a residential neighborhood. They're very loud when they get excited and get going. So I understand Skydev thinking that these private amenities are important to their future condo purchasers as a resort style community. And I understand that if it's in a metro area, but we're not, we're in Meaford. Slide. Meaford has an outdoor pickleball court. It couldn't be any closer. It's just right at the harbor. It's away from residential houses. Not to mention, we play pickleball in the curling club, we play in the community center, and we also play at the school. Next, please. We have walking trails that surround the Skydev site, so there's no shortage of where to take your dog. Next, please. We have beautiful Joe Park is a 10-minute walk away. And we understand that Memorial Off-Leash Dog Park is going to have to be moved. And a lot of people felt that this would be the ideal place to put an off-leash dog park. It is in beautiful Joe Park, not only because it's close proximity to being in the core of downtown, but also because of its greenery, the size of space, and it's not in a residential neighborhood. Next, please. What we don't have is an open green space for children to play in the immediate harbor beachfront neighborhood. We see that 2% of people play pickleball, and the population of Meaford, I found, has 13% children under the ages of 14. In our neighborhood, I would say that's more than double. And the beachfront, everybody knows that's where families go. Next, please. We're looking for an inclusive community, not an exclusive community. I went door to door knocked on everybody's door. And of the 33 neighbors that I was able to talk to, 100% agreed and agreed to a playground and a parkland would be beneficial to our community. The one person that couldn't comment worked for the planning department, so that's okay. And it wasn't you, Bart. And the other 3 or 4 people simply weren't at home. Some of the local residents, including myself, attended many of the Skydev development meetings that we held. And Skydev had assured all of us, oh, we're going to have a We're going to be very community oriented, and there'll be available parklands for the community. And at the time, there was no input received from the community with respect to what we'd look for parklands or green space there. Next, please. Next again, sorry. So under the Planning Act, we do understand the developer has to convey land for a public park or pay cash in lieu of a parkland dedication. And I understand the cash in lieu of a parkland dedication makes sense when there's a park across the street from the development being built. Next, please. Meaford prides itself on community input, and yet the immediate local residents were completely excluded from the decision made by the municipality of Meaford to receive cash in lieu of the parkland dedication. Next, please. Meaford's most valuable asset we know is the beachfront, and how the beachfront is developed and maintained is going to be critical to the continued economic growth of Meaford. A community park linked to the beachfront truly creates an inclusive community which consists of beachfront visitors, local residents, future residents, and hotel visitors. Next, please. We want an integrated development, not a segregated development. Next, please. Skydev prides itself on integrating into existing neighborhoods and that it listens to community feedback. However, Skydev failed to deliver on their promise to include parklands in their community. Next, please. The pickleball court and the dog run is a private amenity, and this only further segregates the new development from the existing neighborhood and beachfront visitors and not having access to local parklands. Next, please. In summary, next, please. The Skydev project, as we all know, was one of the most controversial projects in Meaford, I think. Next, please. Understanding that these are private lands and development was inevitable, in the end, I have the OMB, I'm dating myself, it's the OLT, the Ontario Land Tribunal, approved 168 residential units and 78 hotel units, which should ultimately benefit Meaford economically. Next, please. And though the municipality of Meaford, and I thank you, recommending to move the structures away from the street so they're not towering over the existing houses and provide green space in the corner of Boucher and Fuller, they opted to receive cash in lieu of the parking dedication, now leaving this green space to become a private amenity. Next, please. Our proposed rendering, as you see, we changed it. We very much see that we understand there's berms and trees and all that's going on, noise studies, but what we see is that the berm carries on to stop from the headlights and the parking. And then it's connected to the David Johnson beachfront. And we have what they call maybe perhaps a pocket park or at minimum green space to kick a soccer ball, throw a football that the beachgoers could also use in the neighborhood and push the berm back behind the park to stop, the cars, the noise and the headlights, and put the parklands in the front of the corner of Boucher and Fuller. Next, please. So how can we preserve our beachfront tranquility with an added 168 households, a lot of people, and 78 hotel rooms? Next, please. We hope that today, and after the email I sent out giving you the links to those articles, the council has truly a better understanding of the noise that pickleball courts and a fenced dog park will have on the residents and beach visitors in close proximity to the Skydev site, and to think of that for your future sites, and to learn from our neighbors and our other municipalities why they are built outside of residential areas. Next, please. We are asking council to support a playground and at minimum, a green space as an extension of David Johnson Park. They could come down and cut the grass quite easily already being at the David Johnson Park for the beachfront community to share in recreational activities. The beachfront community recommendations made today will truly create an inclusive beachfront community and integrated development in an existing neighborhood. Next, please. The status, I was looking at the status. I hope it didn't change today. But the status is that it's under review. We have an opportunity to change this because it is under review. I know once it's stamped, and I understand from the planning department, you can't dictate private amenities, but you can certainly control where they go. And perhaps they should be requested to be put inside, available 12 months a year to their future recreational condo purchasers rather than outside. So I'm asking that please don't approve that until you've actually review this seriously. Next, please. So today, we are asking the local Harbor Beachfront residents that are in this room with me today are asking council to repeal the decision made to take cash and revert back to the developer to convey the land for a public park. This is the one thing that the municipality can actually take action on to benefit the local community and municipal beachfront. Thank you for my presentation. I hope you read my emails. It gives you all the links. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them with the help of my neighbors. And we are very interested in knowing what happens after you do a presentation like this. How do you find out what the decision is? And please don't approve it until you looked at this.
Thank you very much. Our second presentation, I'd like to call Tim Lanthier, the CAO of the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. Welcome, Tim.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's great to be here today. I actually don't think I've had the opportunity to come and speak before Council here in Meaford yet. So again, I'd like to thank you for having me. I actually have two presentations that I'll be providing to you today, back to back. And one of them is about our 2025 budget. I'd like to give you some information on the work that we're doing, what we're proposing for 2025 in terms of the budget, but also in terms of highlights of the work that we're doing, and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. And then the second presentation that I'll provide today has to do with our renovation to our current office administrative structure. So what I'd like to start with, especially since I haven't talked to you before, is a quick overview of the strategic direction of the Conservation Authority. So throughout 2024, we've been working on updating our strategic plan, and the board has approved these 5 strategic goals to move us forward over the next 10-year period. So really, these hit our mandatory program areas of monitor and manage natural hazards, enhance the management of the lands that Grey Sauble owns, to improve watershed health, to strengthen our environmental education and communications, and to work towards organizational excellence. Now, I will move rather quickly through the presentation today so that we can get through it within the 10-minute time frame, but certainly if there's anything on any of the slides or anything else that you have questions about, feel free to ask. Slide, please. So a quick overview of 2024 across our entire watershed. So one of the big things that we did as we look towards achieving organizational excellence for Grey Sauble Conservation Authority is making sure that we're looking inwards as to how we're treating the organization, how we're treating our staff and our personnel. And one of the big things that we did was to undertake a renewal of our personnel policies. This is a large undertaking for an organization of our size, and very happy to say that with the exception of a couple of policies that will come back to the board did approve this for us at the last board meeting. As I mentioned, we've initiated and consulted on our 2025 to 2035 strategic plan. We plan to wrap that up in the first quarter of 2025. With the changes that have rampant and progressive changes that have come from the provincial government over the last couple of years, there have been a lot of changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, and a lot of those changes required us to do new things that we weren't previously doing. So there are a slew of new reports that we have had to complete. 2 of them are out for consultation right now, which is a watershed-based resource management strategy and a conservation areas strategy. And you can go to our website or reach out to me directly if you'd like to see either of those. We'll be accepting comments on those till the end of this week before it goes back to the board. We did launch a new education program this year. This is currently 100% funded through our foundation and other sponsors. There is in 2024, there's no levy funding. In 2025, there's a small amount of levy funding to look at educating people on the risks of natural hazards. But this is a very exciting program for us. We have talked to our municipal councils, and we've seen a desire for environmental education, and the school boards are interested and the community is interested. So it's a great new program. We did transition to a new development regulation. The province changed the development regulation for all 36 conservation authorities, amalgamated them into one. and change some of the verbiage within that. So that's been something that we've been working through with the community and with our staff. And you may or may not know, but we charge parking, we charge revenue or a payment for parking at some of our properties through a membership pass. This has been very, very successful for Grey Sauble, and the money that's raised through this goes directly to reducing the amount of levy that we need to collect to operate our properties. But in an effort to make sure that that the properties remain inclusive and available to everyone, one of the things that we've undertaken is to give passes to all of the local libraries so that people can go in and book those out the same way they would take out a book, so that anybody has the opportunity to go to these properties and park at them. And it's only 10 out of 200 properties that we do charge for parking at. Slide, please. So when we look specifically at Meaford, I think it's important that you know some of the work that we're doing right here in your community. So through our forestry program, we've either planted directly or distributed over 23,000 trees throughout the community this year. We completed forest management plans for 9 landowners. We reviewed over 100 permit planning applications within the municipality of Meaford. Through our stewardship program, we worked with agricultural producers to install 500 feet of water diversion. So what this is essentially eaves trough that takes barn roof water and diverts it away from the paddock areas so that the water is not running manure into the streams, as well as helped with the planting of 194 acres of cover crops to again reduce erosion, improve water quality, which you'll see in the streams, but you'll also see at your waterfronts as these streams outlet ultimately into Georgian Bay. We worked with our volunteer group at Haibu, the Friends of Haibu, to continually maintain that property and the boardwalks through there. It's a gem not only within the municipality of Meaford, but for the Conservation Authority itself. It's one of our prime properties. Our drinking water source protection team renewed risk management plans within the municipality and also participated with the municipality in a spill emergency exercise. And the idea here, this was spearheaded by the municipality, but participated in by our drinking water source protection team. And we'll remember that last year, there was an incident not far from the drinking water plant, and our source protection team was involved in that as well. And then, as I mentioned, we did start a new environmental education program this year, and some of that programming happened at Georgian Bay Community School this year. They were one of the early uptakers of that programming. Slide, please. So a high-level overview of this funding for 2025. So our overall budget is just over $4 million. From 2024 to 2025, there's only about a $6,000 change in total budget. So we're seeing programming remain pretty much the same. Our jurisdiction area extends from approximately the Blue Mountain Collingwood border over to Lake Huron, and then southward on an irregular path from about Feversham to the village of Tara over in Erin Elderslie. So it's 3,200 square kilometers, very large area. We serve 8 member municipalities, some of them partially, some of them wholly. So Meaford is wholly within our watershed jurisdiction. And we manage over 29,000 acres of land that we keep open for the public to utilize and enjoy. The funding model for this, when Conservation Authority started, the funding model was approximately 50-50 between the province and the municipalities. Currently, the province contributes about 6.5% of our budget. The lion's share of that is for drinking water source protection. About 1% of that is for what we call Section 39 of the Act, which was that original 50%. So in Grey Sauble's case, we now contribute over 50% of the budget with self-generated revenues, and municipal levy accounts for about 43% of the total budget. Slide, please. So some of the things that have changed with the budget in 2025. So the proposed increase to the levy for Category 1 programs, so these are the mandatory programs that the Conservation Authorities Act says we have to undertake, is just shy of $89,000 spread across 8 municipalities. The Category 3 programming, that's the programming that our municipalities through agreements and our board of directors deem to be advisable or warranted and wanted, is increasing by just under $3,700 across 8 municipalities. The increase in levy this year is largely driven by an increase in operating cost, as well as a reduction in self-generated revenues this year that we're anticipating, and a reduction in the use of reserves and surplus to offset operating costs. So our reduced revenue this year is expected to be about $68,000 reduction in total self-generated revenues. And we've made efforts to offset that by trying to reduce expenses where we can, but we are running a pretty lean budget. So further reductions would actually be service reductions at this point. The administrative center that I'm going to be talking to you about next is not included in this version of the budget, but will be included in the next iteration. Slide, please. So this is the levy breakdown across municipalities within our watershed. I've highlighted Meaford's there. So the increase in levy within the municipality of Meaford is proposed to go up by $13,000 over 2024 in 2025. Slide, please. I'd like to provide a bit of an example to show how this or what this looks like on a taxpayer basis. So first thing to understand is Conservation Authority levies are based on what's called a modified current value assessment. So it takes the current value assessment and modifies it by the percent of the municipality within our watershed. So for Meaford, that's 100%. But if it were Blue Mountains, for instance, 84% of that municipality is within our watershed. So it would be modified by that amount. The levy that is needed is a portion based on a cost per thousand of assessed value. So this year it'll be about 11.5 cents per thousand. So what that means to the average taxpayer, if we were to break it down that way, is for a house that was assessed at $650,000, which is the average cost of a house in September in Grey Bruce counties, that would be $74, just over $74 per year per household. That's up $1.93 per year from 2024. Slide, please. So what we're proposing to do in 2025, some of the bigger projects anyway, are we do have a major renovation to our administrative center planned, and I will talk to you about that in a couple minutes. We're going to finalize our strategic plan, as mentioned. We're going to continue to invest in our properties and our service on our properties to make sure that the visitor experience is enhanced. So this is one of our strategic goals. Our properties see over 300,000 visitors a year and help to drive tourism in the area, as well as providing green space for local residents to attend. We'll continue to develop our Watershed Guardians educational programming. We plan to either plant or distribute over 50,000 trees throughout the watershed. We're looking to renew our planning service agreements. So the renewals are needed both to make sure that both sides are getting the service that they need, but also to reflect changes to the Conservation Authorities Act that happened at the beginning of 2023. We plan to undertake flood mapping in major flood centers, and we'll be looking to seek federal grants for that work. And we're talking to municipal partners now about collaborative projects in that regard, and then carry out further upgrades to our flood and erosion infrastructure within the watershed. Slide, please. So the next steps for this are the Conservation Authorities Act requires that we circulate the budget to municipal partners for 30 days. We almost always opt to circulate it for longer than that to give you plenty of time to review it. So the board approved circulation of the budget at our last board meeting on October 24th. It will be coming back to the board on November 27th. But as mentioned, the admin center capital project was not included in the first iteration of the budget because we wanted to make sure the discussion was around year-over-year change. So we expect to circulate a revised version of the budget after that November 27th meeting and bring it back to the board in January for final approval. Slide, please. So with that, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd welcome any questions that council may have, and I do thank you for your time.
Any questions at all? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Tim, for your presentation today. I did have a question on the slide changes for 2025, and it says your self-generated revenue is anticipated to decrease by approximately $68,000. And I wonder if you could delve into that a little bit for us and why you expect that figure to go down.
Sure, absolutely. So two of the primary revenue generators that we're expecting to see a decline in 2025 over 2024 are one, our forestry services. So we're seeing lower uptake of tree planting as opposed to historic, as well as smaller operations of our own property. So what we do with our own properties is we manage them for ecological benefit. And part of doing that is removing timber from those properties, but we do it in an ecologically sustainable way. Those operation projects are becoming smaller and smaller as time goes on. And so we're expecting a reduced revenue in 2025 in that area. The other side of it is our environmental planning department. So in 2022 or 2023, I think it was 2022, we undertook a review of fees with Watson and Associates to look at what should we be charging for full cost recovery in our planning department. And we went through that exercise, we reviewed it with our board of directors, and we ultimately implemented that. What we're finding is that we're not realizing the revenues that the Watson report expected us to generate. And so the challenge with going for 100% cost recovery is it leaves you no buffers. So this year we're proposing to claw that back a little bit. And so that will result in reduced revenue generation in that department.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Lantier. Tim, following up on the Deputy Mayor's question about the revenues and so on. Over the past few years, the Conservation Authority has been renting out some properties that are reasonably productive for agricultural crops. Hasn't been a great many, but it has been a factor. Is that continuing to happen? And again, some rental money, I think, is likely always appreciated in areas that aren't maybe particularly suited for conservation plans.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Greenfield. We do rent or lease rather some agricultural lands that are in our ownership. There's about 10 properties in total, and we go out to tender on those every 5 years and allow people to bid on working those lands. And we went out to tender on that, I believe, last year was the first year of the new tender, so we won't go out again on that for another 4 years. But yes, we do continue to receive revenue from that.
Councillor Porter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Tim, thank you very much for your presentation to this point. So with regards to the self-generated revenue shortfalls, how does the GSCA plan to address these if this continues to happen year over year going forward?
Well, we're really hopeful that it won't happen year over year going forward. So over the last 5 years, we've actually increased our self-generated revenue by over $600,000, which on a budget of $4 million, and it was closer to 3.32 at that time. That's a substantial increase in self-generated revenue over that time. However, in the short term, the way that we're addressing it is one of the comments I had made and mentioned is that one of the revenue shortfalls is within our planning department. We have had an additional position approved by the board sitting vacant in that department. And for the 2025 year, we've excluded that position from the budget to help ease the burden on the revenue balance there. And similarly with our forestry department, we did have a technician position that has become vacant, and we've chosen not to rehire that position to help balance out that revenue deficiency.
Well, looks like all the questions. Tim, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sorry we can't take questions from the audience. So thank you. Next, we have deputations. And our first deputation is Diane Hilliard, who's, sorry. Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's highly unusual, but I actually have 2 presentations today. So bear with me for another few minutes.
Nope, I understand. Good.
So this item is is an item that's been before our board for quite some time. And so I do want to talk to you about our administrative center and the renovations that we do have planned for it. Slide, please. So to give you a very high level, our administrative center is located within the township of Georgian Bluffs, just south of the city of Owen Sound, on the same property that Inglis Falls sits on. So this diagram shows our office. It's a very unique octagonal shaped building. The octagonal shape with the 4 square points coming out of the southeast, southwest, northeast, and northwest corners are all part of the existing building. We are proposing a small addition on the building in the northeast corner that you'll see in this drawing. That's about 500 square feet in size. Slide, please. So I'd like to give you a bit of a background as to a little bit about the building and then why we're doing what we're doing and where we're going with it. So the building was built in the mid-70s. It has seen maintenance in the last 50 years, but it hasn't seen any overhaul or true investment in the last 70 years. So as you can imagine, over 50 years rather, as you can imagine, over 50 years in time, a lot has changed, and it's important that we be able to keep up with that from a workplace and office perspective. So some of the issues that we're trying to address through the renovation are a layout that has become quite hodgepodge over the last 50 years, a reduction in noise that was fine with the size of the staff that we had in the 70s, but is not sufficient now. And post-COVID with virtual meetings, it's become even more of an issue. Improve our reception area, improve the accessibility of the building, both for staff and for the public. And then we also need to deal with our IT infrastructure, our HVAC infrastructure, and our electrical infrastructure. So we started this process through approval from the board of directors back in 2018, but then some changes internally and externally stalled the project for multiple years. So we did have senior leadership turnover in 2019, and then that followed closely by a global pandemic that slowed us down. In 2022, we started this process up again, and since then the board has approved concept design, then schematic design, then detailed design, which is the stage we just finished. And then in September of this year, the board approved us moving forward with construction drawings. As part of the detailed design process, we went through a Class B costing. And after review between our staff and the architectural team, we were able to reduce that Class B costing estimate by 27%. Slide, please. So some of the things and the reason that we're doing this in more detail and why we wanted to do this and our goals with it are to make the building AODA accessible. It currently is not. It's a split level building. You have to take stairs to get to either floor in the building. We want to improve the public reception area to be more welcoming, more useful and more inviting so that we can offer better service to our clients. We need to renew the interior of the building for staff use, comfort, and efficiency, as well as the major operating systems within the building that I mentioned. And we were hoping to make the building more energy efficient. We weren't able to tick that one off, and I can get into that if you'd like. And then we have had ongoing issues with the roof that we're trying to address. Slide, please. So first and foremost, accessibility. So what you're seeing in the picture on the left is the existing building, and it's actually what we would currently consider the back of the building. So on the 3 other sides of the building, there are mounds that you either had to just climb a grassy mound or there's a ramp and stairs up to a doorway. Our front door is currently on the exact opposite side of this from the building. But we're choosing this to become the front of the building because this is where the larger parking lot at the administrative center is. It also doesn't have a mound, so there's access to both floors from this side of the building. And then it also leads out to our pavilion, to our arboretum, and to the trail networks that surround our office. So this small 500 square foot addition will allow people to enter at grade. And then within this addition is a lift structure that can take people up or down to either floor. Slide, please. This slide is just intended to show how it connects to the existing landscape. And so by doing it this way, it limits the amount of site construction that needs to happen outside of the existing envelope of the structure. Slide, please. This is within the new lobby. So everything on the left half of that drawing is existing. building. And those thick gray lines on the top and bottom in the middle portion are existing building. The two parts where the walls start to converge towards each other is the new portion of the building. Slide, please. And so to give you a sense of where we're at today versus where we hope to be a little over a year from now, is the image on the left here shows our existing entrance that you do have to take a non-accessible ramp or a set of stairs to get into. It's very confined, it's very dark, and it's not very welcoming. It also doesn't provide a great opportunity for people to learn about what we do or for us to invite the public in. On the right-hand side, you see what the new office will look like. So a small addition and then tying into the existing structure allows us to have a much more bright and inviting office space or entry space. It allows us to have display areas so people can learn about the programs that we offer. It provides us with an opportunity to meet with the public. And it also provides that vital accessibility piece with the lift that you see on the left-hand side of the right drawing. That'll allow people to go down or up within the office. Slide, please. In terms of workspace, the image on the left shows what it looks like today. So certainly it's been functional for the last 50 years, but it's becoming less and less so as time goes on. So it is very broken up. We do have staff literally tucked into corners of the office now with made up cubicles. And none of the offices, even myself or HR, finance, none of those offices are enclosed. So not only does that limit the ability to have confidential conversations, but it also causes a lot of noise and disruption for everybody within the office when anybody's having meetings, which is becoming more and more of a factor for us. Slide, please. So in the new iteration, groups of staff will be isolated into departments. So our planning department, they'll all be in the same room together, but it'll be their room. And then forestry would be the same. So when they're having discussions, it's not interrupting the rest of the office. And then managers will have their own offices so that they can have confidential discussions as needed. What you're seeing in the left right now is our boardroom, which is not actually a boardroom, but it's rather an open space within the office that has our board tables set up. So this becomes a challenge for us, even in terms of governance of the organization, in that there is no room like the chambers that we're sitting in today for our board to meet in without staff walking through and it being a disruption on both sides. In the new iteration, the boardroom will be isolated at the back of the office, and we'll have another meeting area beside it. So it can be 2 meeting rooms, but when the board's in session, an accordion wall will open. So if there's public or staff there, they can engage in the meeting as well. Slide, please. So the obvious question is, what does this cost? And so we did go through, at the schematic design stage, we had an order of magnitude cost done by the architects, and it came in around $1.5 million. Time went on, costs changed, and the magnitude of the work in terms of the electrical systems, the HVAC systems and stuff have since added to the cost. So we had a Class B cost estimate done, which is, almost the finish point of the project. And that came back at 3.6, which, as you can imagine, is well beyond what we hoped for our budget in this. So between the architectural design firm, our staff, and the cost consultant, we were able to pick away at things within the project and scale that back to $2.6 million. So we knocked about $900,000, $950,000 off the project. And we feel that we're in a place now where we can move forward with this. When we include ancillary costs like a lease for the time that we're out of our building and fixtures and furniture and professional fees, it brings us up to about $3 million. Grace Hobble is hoping to draw from reserves as much as we realistically and feasibly can, which we expect to be in the order of $800,000 to $900,000. But the remaining amount we're going to need to borrow. So we're talking to lenders right now about that. We are hopeful that we're in a good situation with rates going down, that's going to become a better and better situation over the next year. And we're looking at amortizing over 15 years. And the reason for the 15-year amortization term is last year at around this time, we met with the senior staff at all of our municipal partners, so that being the CAOs and the finance staff, to talk about what is a reasonable place for us to come in at? Like, obviously, any extra costs are not an easy thing to talk about, but what is reasonable without being exorbitant? And so when we got the numbers back and we broke them down and we looked at the different amortization periods, 15 years puts us at a nice balance of meeting those expectations with not driving the cost of interest up too high over too long of a term. So the Conservation Authorities Act stipulates that we will use the modified current value assessment, the same as we do for levy for this. And based on that, with a 15-year amortization, the anticipated annual cost for the municipality of Meaford would be $25,000 per year. Slide, please. So thank you very much for listening to that. I'm happy to answer any questions through you, Mr. Mayor. It is an exciting project. I fully understand that that any additional cost burden is just that, it's a burden. But it's important that we remember that we're a partnership. That's how conservation authorities were designed in light of municipalities. And the mechanism for this type of work is through levy. And we've tried to be absolutely as cost effective as we can with this project.
Thank you. Any questions around the horseshoe? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Tim. The proposed renovation looks absolutely beautiful, and I hope it can go forward. My question, though, of all of the municipalities that the Conservation Authority serves, what is the scenario if, if one or two decide that they just can't manage it this year? Are you still able to go forward, or would that put a pause on this construction?
We'd have to look into what that means. So the first step is for it to come back to our boardroom table and for the board to approve it moving forward or not. The way the Conservation Authorities Act works is that if the board approves it, it gets levied. And then there are appeal mechanisms built into that for municipalities. I'm hoping we can find a place, land on a place that everybody can afford to move forward. Like I said, there are options to reduce that annual cost by amortizing over a longer period of time, but the end cost to that ultimately goes up for everybody. And personally, I hate looking at that interest cost and thinking that we're paying more than we need to in the long run.
Councillor Greenfield?
Your Worship, through you to Mr. Rentier, thanks, Tim. I know this reno has been in the works for 2 or 3 years now. It's a 50-year-old building. It is a very unique design, which makes it somewhat different. But hey, it's the authority building. It's been for 5 decades, and people have got accustomed to that. Difficult to renovate. I think it's an important factor that 30% of the costs approximately are in reserves now, and that to me gives great credit to the Conservation Authority for having that money available. I guess conservation authorities have been so many changes. 25 years ago, the province was giving you over $1 million, and now they're giving you less than 100,000. Your properties overall have increased greatly. Your staff has increased somewhat over the years. Are you confident that the renos that you are planning, and you're a young man, you're going to be around for a while. Are you confident that these renovations are going to be adequate to take the business of the Conservation Authority forward in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Yes, I am. So we're not looking at exponential staff growth over the next decade even. We do anticipate some growth if budget allows for it and the work is there. But the revised building not only provides a much more efficient use of space for the existing staff, but it also provides for approximately 6 to 8 additional staff positions within that building without wasting space, because we're working within the space that we already have.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Thank you, Tim. Can you tell me how the roof is on that building?
It could be better.
I do apologize. I did work on that roof. Having said that, is it possible to sell some of the 28,000 acres you have to pay for this?
That's a difficult question to answer. So I guess the short answer is possibly. And so as one of the things that we have to go through in 2024, and we're in the process of wrapping up right now, is a conservation lands inventory. So this is a new addition to the Conservation Authorities Act. And so what this inventory is looking at every single property we own and everything about it. How did we acquire it? What did we pay? How was it funded? So on, so on. But one of the questions that the province is asking is this property suitable for housing development? Which you can understand, the province has an agenda to put more houses in the ground. So one of the things we'll be looking at is just that. Cursorily, no, is the short answer in terms of, are the green spaces suitable to sell off for development? No, most of our properties are within the Niagara Escarpment area, and they're either not suitable for severance because the Niagara Escarpment Commission wouldn't allow it, or they're not suitable for development because the reason that we own these properties is either for the natural heritage values that they provide or for natural hazard protection. That being said, there are some properties that are not meeting either of those goals that are in urbanized areas that we will be looking at, but we can't depend on that right now. So what we're looking at through a lender is making sure that there's an opportunity to exit the loan earlier and see the benefit from an interest rate perspective of exiting the loan earlier should the Conservation Authority come into more money other than the annual payments. So it's something that we're investigating, but on a large scale, en masse, are we looking at selling off land? No.
Just to follow up, what about agricultural lands? The price of farmland right now has gone up tenfold. Is there any opportunity there?
Again, it would be the same thing. So a great example within the municipality of Meaford is Greersville. If you're familiar with the Greersville area, I'm thinking town of Euphrasia, Sydenham town line, St. Vincent town line. And anyway, so we have property there, and we have a forested area with the Bruce Trail running through it. And then on either side of it, there's agricultural land that we lease out. Can't sever that off though, because it's within the Niagara Escarpment plan area, and it's tied part and parcel with that forested area. So although we have agricultural land, we don't have that opportunity to sell it. Now, that being said, that agricultural land is helping to generate revenues that do help to offset levy in other areas.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim, and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, Council.
We have deputations on agenda items today, and the first deputant is Diane Hilliard, who is going to be online with us. Are you there now, Diane?
Hello?
Hi, Diane.
Oh, hi. Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm sorry, and thank you for your time today. I'm sorry that I'm unable to attend in person, but like staff, I have a business call going on in the background I've just walked away from, so I do apologize. Anyway, I urge you today to vote in favor of recommendation 3. Even though it's yet another study, I do feel that recommendations 1 and 2 are pretty much the same current situation and would basically keep things status quo. For us here, we do live beside an Airbnb or a short-term rental, and we are constantly told to call the police. Well, that's not much of a solution, because by the time the officers arrive, advise the guests to keep it down, we have either sufficiently annoyed the guests to the point that they start peeking around our house, which I have on camera, or they threaten us. So we call the police again, and so forth and so forth. So why don't we call every time we are disturbed? Well, I guess you can tell me that. For us, we have been also repeatedly told that the property owner wants to build her dream home there. That was 4 years ago. Naive me, I still try to work with her when guests get disruptive. Her property manager typically texts back fairly quickly, although sometimes it's from hundreds of kilometers away. So they get on the phone and they plead with the guest to keep it down, take it inside, stop shooting off fireworks, shut the fire down. There's 30 kilometers wind out there. And so the list goes on. I want to be a good neighbor. I am a good neighbor. Maybe I'm being duped. Maybe she'll never build. And then I have the rest of my days to put up with this nonsense. Think about this. Let's just say the house next door is rented 3 days a week with 6 people in it each night. Over the course of the year, that is 936 people that go up and down the side of our home. 936. Here's the kicker. That house is rented a minimum of 5 nights a week. And in the milder weather, it's 7 nights a week. So you do the math. If this proposed bylaw is this proposed bylaw a big expenditure? Absolutely it is. Yes, anything that is worthwhile in the preservation of a community and the safety and peaceful enjoyment of one's property is. I would like to ask in the report, is the $388,000 budget line for one dedicated bylaw officer for STRs, or is it a combination of bylaw officers' salaries and benefits? It's quite confusing, perhaps on purpose. Will the first years be financially challenging? Yes, as most other municipalities have already stated this. However, there are opportunities for revenue through fees and fines, or like the town of Blue Mountains recently approved, a new tourism tax that can help offset costs. A report from Collingwood today states that based on the town of Blue Mountains' 1,800 units, when their new 4% tax is applied each time a unit is rented, they could generate more than $4 million a year. Now, Town of Blue Mountains has more units than Meaford does, but wow, what a way to generate revenue. A well-crafted bylaw can enhance our fiscal health by tapping into the economic potential of short-term rentals, all the while safeguarding the interests of our residents. However, the absence of a policy leaves us vulnerable to the unchecked growth of short-term rentals, which can disrupt our community's harmony and strain local resources. Why should Meaford be the wild, wild west of the province? Implementing a bylaw can help us maintain the character of our neighborhoods, protect long-term housing availability, and can generate additional revenue. Let's not lag behind. Please vote in favor of recommendation 3 and demonstrate your commitment to responsible governance and the well-being of your community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Diane. The second presenter is Robert Foster, who is in the audience, I believe. Robert?
Just left my phone call.
Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of council and staff. My name is Robert Foster, and my wife and I reside at 261 Cedar Avenue. I'm before you today regarding the short-term accommodation project and specifically item 52 before council today. I have presented to council previously on the matter of STAs and have always received reassuring and supportive feedback. And one statement that has been continually used is that Meaford does not need to reinvent the wheel on this issue. I have repeatedly been told that this issue was heard loud and clear in the last election and would be a priority. This brings me to the item before you today for discussion. But first, let me quote from the charter. This project will examine existing available data and bylaws adopted by other municipalities before presenting a recommended short-term accommodation licensing bylaw for council's consideration. The bylaw will be designed to address the concerns related to negative impacts on neighboring properties resulting from short-term accommodation rental STA activities and residences within the municipality of Meaford. The project charter's current timeline on the same website still reads, and I quote, presentation of a recommended licensing bylaw to council at regularly scheduled public meeting by Q4 2023. So here we are today, more than 2 years later and a year late on the project goal established by this council. And there's no outward sign of anything being accomplished. Pardon my sarcasm, but I am certainly glad that this is a priority. I would hate to think of a timeline if it weren't.
Which brings me to the item for consideration before you today, which leaves me aghast. The charter clearly states, as I just read it, that the purpose is to examine existing bylaws of other municipalities before presenting a bylaw to council, and that it would address the negative impacts. Where does any of this appear in what's in front of you today? You are provided three options. Number one, do nothing. I guess that means just throw the whole thing in the circular file. Two, let's do some more studying and consult with the STA platforms. Where are residents in this scenario? I will have further remarks on this later. And finally, item three, let's do some more research to come up with a financial excuse to support item one. The Airbnb and VRBO business model is for absentee landlords to rent out entire properties with quick turnover versus traditional and acceptable B&Bs, which have landlords renting portions of their own home. Do not be seduced by the repeated claims of the contribution they make to local economies. My firsthand experience and all those I speak with know this to be false. Renters renting an entire cottage arrive on day one, lugging multiple coolers brought from the city, containing all their food and beverages, and rarely leave the property. As the different other guests come and go, they also bring their own supplies. The other thing that annoys me with this report is the continued focus on the number of complaints. And as Diane alluded to, this is entirely misleading and a crutch leaned on for those not wishing to advance legislation. The complaint process is flawed, and residents just don't bother to complain as they see it to be pointless. Another point is the measure only reflects issues that escalate to the point of registering a complaint. It does nothing to capture the months that we all endure of constant fire, smoke, noise, and partying. Other jurisdictions, not just locally, but nationally and internationally, have already woken up to the long-term negative impacts that the Airbnb business model has on communities and have implemented stringent legislation to regulate them. The most notable societal impacts are negative impacts on housing shortages, particularly long-term rental properties, and inflated long-term rental costs. Consequently, the likes of Airbnb and VRBO are for the first time seeing headwinds in their corporate growth. More recently, the federal government has recognized the issue, and the federal tax court has recently ruled to remove the residential exemption from HST for short-term rental properties at time of sale. And now that when these properties sell, they are subject to 13% HST. Despite all of this, and after more than 2 years have passed, absolutely nothing has been accomplished. It appears that Meaford does indeed want to reinvent the wheel, despite numerous examples of successful legislation all around us. And a cynic might comment that there almost seems to be concerted effort, as evidenced by the in-person engagement day, to stifle this issue from progressing. That is why many of us find the concept of consulting rental platforms an item too offensive. I'll repeat what I've said to you previously. If I were to park a cart and sell hot dogs on any street in Meaford, this municipality would be all over me like a wet blanket. Yet someone can buy a property in an established neighborhood and operate a completely unregulated hotel next door to me and my neighbors with absolutely no consequences. Do the right thing, listen to your fellow residents who live here with you, not the absentee landlords promoting the lies and falsehoods about the benefits of STAs, and discard this proposal before you and move on to the long-promised effective STA legislation. Ratepayer patience is growing very thin, as based on past performance, having something in place now for 2025 now looks questionable, so action is needed now. Thank you for your time, and my request is that you consider my comments during your upcoming deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The third presentation is with Joe and Barb Lawson, who are in person.
No, Steph. Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Joe Lawson. I live at 170 Queensbush Drive, Annan, Ontario. My first really thought here was that might one day be that I discard all my information on short-term accommodation and rentals, but I guess this was not to be. To me, the most important part of this whole discussion is the fact that STRs, if accepted, should only be allowed in designated commercial areas of the municipality of Meaford, not, and I say not, in residential areas. I am living with a ghost motel as a neighbor. Two of the most prolific companies on the stock exchange are the Airbnbs and the VRBO. These billion-dollar corporations are providing information for all those so-called investors so that they can open a motel in any residential area with no consequences at all. They try living in a residential area with a motel next to you without an owner. They can do and do anything they want. Parking 6 to 7 cars in their driveway. I sent an email about the cars to the bylaw office. And the response was, so what? So what? We have no laws to do anything about it. All of these ghost motels, most must be inspected and approved before any customer enters their premises, whether commercial or residential areas. Remember what happened in Montreal? It can happen here. The absolute worst scenario for my wife and myself of having these managerless motels is when the first car arrives, then the second car arrives, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh. This unknown is upon us. What is it now? What is now in store for us from these people, and for how long? Do we in a residential area have to tolerate this? Why? Is not living, loving, and trusting your neighbors the most important aspect of living in a residential area? Okay, about these parts 1, 2, and 3. Sure, do nothing with part 1. That's pretty straightforward. Number 2, I thought we have already done this investigation with all the other towns and areas, and that we were ready to go with this already. The third option, the town, well, okay, the town should cover all their expenses, plus make a profit, as Robert said, for our municipality. Everybody else is making money here. VRBO and Airbnb, the ghost motel owners, the municipality of Meaford should be making money on this so that our taxes could stay the same or maybe even be reduced if possible. I doubt it. The town says that we have 232 STA properties. I believe there are a lot more here, and there'll be a hell of a lot more if nothing is done about this. They should have to pay their share, plus for all their services. 232 was used years ago. Surely there are more STAs now. Just 232. Okay. And you're going to charge them $265.75. I can't even buy a good bottle of scotch for $76. Why not charge them $232, $2,000 licensing fee, which will give the town $464,000. If you have 300 of them, which I believe you really do, times $2,000, you're getting $600,000 out of this. Even more, if there's 2,500, even if you charge them, these guys in 2 days, in 1 week, they can cover $2,500 in 2 nights. Some of these places, like what are you farting around with? $276. I mean, this is just peanuts in this day and age. And you're establishing a motel next to you, basically What a motel? I'd rather have a motel with an owner in it. That's really what I would really rather have than what the hell all this nonsense is about. Okay. I guess I'm finished. Now I can discard all my information for the last time. With regards, Joseph P. Lawson, Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy for 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no public questions today, so I'm just going to move right into council inquiries. Councillor Forder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And through you to the CEO. I just wanted to we'll just let it settle for a second. Thank you. I just wanted to take an opportunity to discuss the matter surrounding the Centerville Beach. And I just know that there's been a lot of information going around, and I figure this would be a great opportunity for our CAO to sort of address the elephant, and that way everybody's on the same page and we all have access to the same information. So I'll turn it over to you for comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to go meet up with the group of concerned citizens on Saturday. But of course, this Centerville area and the ownership, I'll say, has been part of, I'll say, the municipality and what we've been working on quite a bit before that time. So I'll just kind of maybe go back a little bit because I think it's actually quite pertinent to where we are today. So back on July 20th of 2020, quite a ways back, there was a consultation where the former CAO and clerk inquired about this area of land. And so I'm just going to read the conclusion. And again, you'll hear my commitment to council, but also to the public, is to put together a report. So we will share this report in its full. But I'm just going to read an excerpt just to kind of cut to the chase, if you will, so that I also don't take up too much time today. But in conclusion, the review of the title on the Lakeshore Road where ownership revealed no indication that the municipality has ownership or responsibility for any property. There were not documents to indicate that there was any intention of the parcel being dedicated or assumed by the public. There is no indication that an owner of these properties ever intended to transfer these areas to the municipality for purposes of public. And then just kind of a little bit further down, the lands were originally transferred by the Crown to a private individual, and there are no registries on title to suggest that the lands were ever transferred back to the public or a public authority. So I just going to pause and I'll read a little bit more. So you'll see that we've done a lot of communication, assign these types of things. I think it was Friday, all on that term of saying this isn't public. And I think that was, again, because of this letter. And of course, because of its date, we had it reconfirmed to ensure that there was no new information about the property. But just to further, and I promise I'm not the best reader, so I won't read a lot more, but the most recent instruments found on title to the land indicate that a private individual had title on the property or were claiming title from a previous owner. Furthermore, there are no registers on title to these properties that indicate that they have ever been the subject of a bylaw, subdivision agreement, or Crown survey. So again, just reiterating that there was no evidence that there was also a subdivision or like some sort of severance of that parcel. Like I say, I think the important part is, and I think the people that I met with on Saturday would say, the important part actually comes down to access to a beach, right? Access to public space with the waterfront, which is why they moved to Meaford and love it so much. So in meeting with them, they also have gotten a lawyer to give them an opinion on what are the options. I did see it, and they did send me a copy of that report. I haven't read through it but they did send it to me this morning. So again, I will put that as part of the report to council so you can see if there are indeed options. And that's what they're proposing. They're looking for us, and I committed to getting for them, sending their legal to our legal, just to see, things through a different lens might be important. And to ask our legal for options, timelines, costs for the use of the road allowance. Typically, we wouldn't have a use like a public beach on a road allowance, but I just wanted to see if there was any information on that. And if that turns out that we would do a community notice. Second, that we would find out options, timelines, costs, and probability of success for the municipality to purchase the property or acquire the property through other means. And again, just based on, kind of that conversation on Saturday, their lawyer feels that there's some options for us to acquire the property, but I just would need to, I didn't get a full sense of exactly what that meant. And lastly, insurance coverage on the property. So right now, being that it's not owned by the municipality, my assumption, but we're confirming that, is that we can't actually insure the property without ownership over it. It would not probably be likely that we could actually have insurance on it. So I sent that email on Sunday afternoon, making sure that I had heard them correctly. I did get back a note just saying, thanks, Kim, appreciate your follow-up today. They, I think in all comments, just about, they did send us some questions as well. So we do want to get back answers to their questions they sent on October 30th. So we'll definitely get those answers back to them. They also would like to drop off and are welcome to drop off files in relation to some of the historical deed and title from a family. As well, they asked if they could have, like, if they needed to have a petition. I just confirmed with them in writing, they don't need to have a petition to for us to bring a report to council. That while they are welcome to, it's not a required step in order to have a report to council. So also, like I say, that was just all yesterday. So to your point, it's good to just get up-to-date minutes. As well as we learn pieces from our lawyer, and we'll post those on our website. So we do have a, I can't remember right off the top. I think it's something like news at, I should know this. I won't quote it because I'll get it wrong, but there is a link on our website to go to this area, and we'll be doing more advertising to that space so that if people have, curiosity of where it's at, or they want to make sure the information is as accurate and up to date as possible, that's the place. Typically, we don't do a lot on Facebook in this type of measure, but I do think we did on Friday just to let people know kind of, what was going on from our side of things. But I think that explains why we were communicating around it's not public property. At that point in time, there was a claim on as a private property. I believe that is still the case. I did check in on this in the last month. No change from our lawyer. So we're going to just be finding out more information and sharing it with you when we have it. The website is news clarification -land Centerville Road. There we go. So that's where people can find the up-to-date information as we have it. Is that?
Yeah, follow-up question, sure.
Yeah.
Just a comment. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to look into this matter. I know it's not our standard thing, but thank you very much for your attention to this, and I look forward to hearing updates.
Other inquiries, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. I actually have two. I had one, but I'm going to follow up with Brandon. Can you tell me, do we own the road allowance? And has somebody paid tax on this property for the last number of years?
So it goes back to the road allowance portion. I do have an ask to the lawyer just to clarify, because there can be situations, as you know, where we make conditions and specific pieces, and it's not just as straightforward as, do we or don't we? Right now, from this last version, we don't. But I am asking for more clarification of exactly how we can use that road allowance. And there was some questions about, does the road allowance go to the end of the road, or does it travel through the beach area to the edge of the water? So just more clarification on that is to come, but I don't have a certain answer for you on that. Have we been getting taxes? Yes, but not on the specific. So there was so on the portion of the parcel, can't remember what year it dropped off, and in which case we haven't been getting taxes on the far side of the road, but we have been on the principal piece of the property. So I guess it depends on which portion exactly that you're speaking about, but yes for one side, no for the other.
So there's an opportunity for back taxes.
There would be if that is the case, yeah.
Thank you. Now, my original inquiry, talking about the Skydev property, how much money is the cash in lieu? And in my mind, this money was going to go to the boardwalk and area for the municipality. Is that still the plan? And at the very southeast end, we acquired a piece of property. Is that going to be green space?
So I'll have to take those pieces away, because I know that the negotiation was actually with a planner that isn't with us right now. So I'll have to take those questions aside. But I also do know that we're still in conversation. So again, the ship hasn't sailed, and there certainly can be further conversations. So as it was noted, it is in progress, and I believe even they've reached out to the mayor and the deputy this week. So yeah, but I'll get you some clarity on those questions.
Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As long as we're going to be centric on water, Ms. Breedman in Centerville. This is going to actually relate more to the harbor and Red Rapers Park. So I just have a question about the artifacts that we managed to get from Captain Shepherd's property, his collection. That wouldn't have been part of the original harbor master plan. So I'm just curious whether there is, and obviously the budget's coming up, didn't say anything about it in there. So all that reading, I could have missed it. So I'm just curious whether there is a plan to do that in the near future. And again, this is kind of harkening back to the mural concept. That the point is to kind of bring people down there. We've had a lot of great 150th events down there. The harbor is getting used a lot. That's great. But again, anything we can do that may not be onerous financially or otherwise. Just curious whether that's kind of on the table planning wise. And in concert with that, I know this was discussed in the past, but the Fred Rapers Park, the playground equipment that came out of there once upon a time, long time ago, whether again there are plans for that to kind of go back in. So again, people can enjoy our waterfront a little bit more family wise.
Through the chair, the first part of the question. So great question on the artifacts. The harbor master plan hasn't come back to you guys for kind of a final view, and no fault of anyone's. It's just more been transitionary. We are at the point in which we want to share that information. So now we have a new person in the role and we've brought them up to speed, but it's been a bit of time, and we've had this conversation that our plan for next year is to reintroduce the concept of what we had thought about down at the harbor, bring that to the public so that we have another, it's not just going to come here first. We kind of want to bring it to everyone back again. There's a lot of, it's been a few years, so we kind of just want to put it out to everyone, go through the public process, and then you'll see parts of that through next year's budget is my thought. But we kind of just want to familiarize everyone with it again, since it's been kind of on the shelf. But with that said, we did catch the with the transition of everyone kind of at the end there, we did catch the consultants and ask them to identify a location on the concept plan to include some of these artifacts as well, which you're right, they weren't kind of happened beforehand, so they weren't included. So they have done that. There is some space in which, without getting too in the weeds, that they've identified they could be located. So that will be brought forth as part of the plan in general this year for everyone to see, and then we can discuss budgeting for making that all happen the next time. Oh, second part. Great question. To be honest, I don't have an answer on that one. That all happened prior to my involvement, but it's a great point, and we've had a lot of good conversation this year about looking at updating playgrounds in general and what that process might look like, and having a bit more of a formalized process for, you know, AODA changes to playgrounds, locating places that don't have them that might want them. So stay tuned for more about playgrounds, equipment, and all that kind of fun stuff in the new year.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Your worship, through you to either Ms. Buckham or Ms. Wiley, concerning the harbor, and this is fairly late breaking questioning. But in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we have had a couple of people comment about not the water in the harbor, but what is in the water at the harbor. And it seems that the amount of debris has accumulated. I think this started about 8 years ago when a young man running for council asked about trees in the harbor, and I'm not sure if the same trees are still there or not, but I haven't had a chance to completely scan this, so I'm not sure if there's anything in the 2025 budget about dredging in the harbor, and is it too early for a bit of an update? But I understand there are some difficulties there.
Through the chair, you missed page whatever. There is it is included in the budget as an optional service for 2025 or 4, right? And you will see that in that giant document. It's a bit too early to identify exactly where and what the logistics are on it. We're kind of working through permits and all the good things that come with that work. There's specific time frames that it needs to happen in. But right now, we've been looking back at where we've done it, what year we did it prior, and kind of what we need to do in order to do dredging if it's required in 2025. So it's on our radar. We are, and you will see it mentioned in the budget as a choice for next year.
I could also maybe add that I think I've seen an email in my inbox today from somebody who's intimately involved in servicing the harbor, and with great concerns about the silt buildup and the ability to, you know, continue to have a marina in Meaford if we don't dredge the harbor. So, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, I hope that maybe you yourself might be able to answer this question from some of your, you know, educational packages that you get being a mayor. So what happens is typical of what's just occurred a few minutes ago. We've had a number of people who took time out of their lives to come to council, and their basic thrust this afternoon for them is the short-term accommodations, and we've watched them leave. Is there something that we can say to deviate from the printed agenda to take on a subject matter at hand to entertain the conversation with more people present? Have you been instructed that we can modify our printed agenda, or is not normal?
We've always been able to, and I didn't, we discussed today's meeting. I don't think I foresaw as many, you know, members of the public wanting to see how we dealt with that issue. We'll get to it sometime this afternoon, but I'm it's their choice, to whether or not they may go home and watch it on, YouTube. I don't know, but it's always a good idea to try and give people, an immediate response or as close to immediate as we can. And it appeared to me that they were going to hang in for a while, but they have moved on, so.
The reason why I asked that, Mr. Mayor, is that the organization that I am close to also uses Robert's rules. And one of the things that we say is a motion to entertain deviation from printed agenda. And I understand printed agenda is the subject matters at hand in order, and folks look for them. And they know that in our sequence of events, they don't have to be here at 1 o'clock because they know what's coming up later. So I understand that. I just didn't know if we had that ability to do that.
And we have in the recent past done that. I can't cite the exact examples, but we've had lots of delegations over a period of time on a number of issues, and I think we've acquiesced on a number of occasions so that people could get our response and hear the debate before they left. So I'm not against that at all.
And I was just going to add, and if we know ahead of time, they can make arrangements with Alex, not just for virtual, but also for timing, so that again, they, if it works for them to be here for at the end or the beginning, they just need to make that request and or let Alex know that they've got a limited window, and we do try to shuffle. I think there's been even times where we've gone in and out of the committee on the whole to be able to add that in.
Any other questions around the horseshoe? If not, next item is tabling of the 2025 draft budget, which consists of the draft budget book, council strategic priorities update, and deferral of capital projects, and draft budget presentation and appendix to electives. So I need a motion to put this on the floor.
No, Mr. Mayor, sorry, we don't need a motion for this one. If we could just turn it over to CAO Buckham, she'll just say a few words, but we're just tabling for today, not
Okay.
considering anything.
Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I just thought it would be nice and important to let's say walk through what we're going to be going through over the next couple of weeks to a month. So this isn't a time, quite yet. Hold your questions. They are good and we do want to answer them. But I think it would just be great to look at the overall process and to ensure that, the public also are very aware of the next steps. Of course, this is on our website, but it's nice to walk through it. Can you just pump this one slide forward? Oh. Thank you. So the schedule, I just wanted to give a sense that even before we started, I'll say the formalities around the workshop and the November schedule, but I just want to remind folks and appreciate that they took the time to complete a survey between the months of August and September, because truly that's actually when we, I'll say, started the engagements. And then even before, just want to thank the team and staff, because in the months of June and July and August and September and October, we have been going through a lot of analysis and cost considerations to build the budget. And we'll talk about some of the work, like I say, that we've done ahead of time. But just going forward, I just want to draw attention to the session that we did last Friday, where we did a workshop talking about the framework of this budget and also the process of developing the core service plans. So commonly they're referred to as work plans, and we've changed the name to reflect the core services that the municipality provides. Second, today, tabling, we also have the meeting, which I hope folks stay around for at 5 p.m. In regards to the fees and charges. This is the public meeting to review those. Starting next week, we get down into the details. So the novels you have in front of you, we get to the first opportunity to start talking about and working together as a team on what we've classified as core services, both the operational and the capital. If we are able to get through that much in time. The core services, it's a little bit hard to define, but it is the services that we've put into a category that we've assumed for quite some time, and a standard level has already been set of the service in of itself. On the 15th, we'll be talking about the elective services. And these services are essential to our community. We've gotten used to having them. I'll highlight today at this presentation. It's hard, it was really difficult to decide what are core services and what are elective services. And certainly, it could definitely be argued for either or. We just also needed to start seeing if there was an opportunity, can we, challenge either the total value, the total encompassed amount of service, and or the arrangement in the first place. Some of the elective services have been longstanding arrangements, contracts, those types of things, and thought it would be good just to make sure that this council still knew that they were all in the budget, and we wanted to bring that forward to make sure that we were all still moving forward in the same direction. If need be, November 19th is there for us to finish up. There are 30 core services, and then there are 48 elective services. So there's potential that we'll need that second day on the 19th to go through the final elective services. And then we have the public meeting on November 25th. To go over everything with the public and have any questions asked, and then finalizing the budget on the 9th. I just want to make a note there that, and I don't have a particular slide here, there's the difference between the portion of the budget in which the municipality is making a decision on, and then there's also a portion of the tax that folks will pay, which is actually determined by the county and by the province. So often we refer to that as the blended tax rate. Of course, these meetings will just be the decisions in which you can. So that's about, for every dollar, I believe it's 60 cents, something like that, right, Mel? Yeah. Okay, slide forward. The drafting, that happens, quite a bit of that happens back at our desk. And you don't see that, but we are trying to bring forward, and I think actually our conversations in next week and the following will really, I think, highlight how this is quite a bit of work. It's a lot of analysis. It's a lot of deciding, do we have the right ways of going forward? Like Jessica was mentioning, just with the parks, harbor, are we planning the right things and making sure that everybody's on the same page? When we did the survey, we realized that there was some common elements. So we collected those into 3 buckets. There was a common element around services related to safety, connectedness, and sustainability. So the surveys that we got back in, and I'll talk to that in a moment, they gave us the priorities in those 3 categories. And so you'll see that we'll also show you how those priorities are funded in the core services as well as in the elective. Next, the prioritization. Like I said, it was pretty difficult to say which was core, which was elective. In fact, I'll admit one right off the top a little later in this presentation that we really struggled with. But that to say, we generally put most of the common essential community functions into core services, where we said the elective services might be more enhancements to the quality of life. I think, like I say, that could absolutely be debated. It wasn't to challenge us in the prioritization, but more just to give us a couple of categories. So as I mentioned, there'll be a presentation in regards to our core services. So the team worked on, I'll say, objective statements for their service plans. They also worked at what are the deliverables for 2025, so that you could see what are the costs related to And that was a big piece of the work that folks did over the August and September timeframe. And then the elective service selection, it's going to be a tough portion because staff, as well as council, I think we need to kind of collaboratively work together to figure out the best way to align our strategic goals for 2025, and then also determine what things we can balance to ensure that the tax rate is still in the realm of reasonable. Next slide, please. So just some highlights from the budget survey. Again, appreciate, we had, again, there's about 11,000 people in Meaford. I won't lie, I was kind of hoping we'd have about 1,000 people complete the survey. I was probably very optimistic, but I am very thankful to the 300 folks that did take the survey. Those folks let us know that 56.5% of them said they want the services to remain the same. There was a small group looking for more resources, and about 28.8 that said, you know, a little less resources would be available to them. But for the most part, again, I think this is relevant to the presentation today and a hot topic across Ontario. In fact, we did have a lot of our respondents saying that they wanted an increase in services from OPP at a 45.5%. Additionally, we had respondents at 53% say they want more funding to capital projects. I do think these are really important for us to keep in mind and certainly guide us along the way. And again, I think that's the importance of having, when people know that their voices are being heard in a collective, surveys are just one way. Certainly coming to council and speaking to you and presentations, deputations, that's another way. But we can also do outreach, as Jessica was mentioning, you know, where we get community groups together to give us feedback on harbor and park plans. All these things will be very important, I think, in 2025. Next slide, please. So this is where I think we come to talk, right? The risks. I've been here just slightly over 6 months. And I know that you hired me to bring forward, you know, some of the problems to work on and fix them, and to bring to you the important pieces so that we can, like I say, address them and action them as soon as possible. Risk managing is somewhat common practice, but I think sometimes it's also calling out, I think you use the elephant in the room. I don't want them to necessarily be elephants in the room. I do think that we need to, like I say, discuss them freely, recognize that no one person owns the risk alone, but that if we don't actually address the risks or talk about the risks or talk about the impacts to our budget because of these risks, we just won't be as transparent and we won't get past some of the problems and we won't fix them. So I like to highlight these because I think that they're actually incredibly relevant into our 2025 budget. So the first one, you know, people talk about inflation and the cost of the pressure, but I think what we're seeing in the 2025 budget is that we kind of have to figure out how are we going to deal with that. So certainly inflation, I think goes back, you know, just around 2020, but certainly in 2022, there's a huge spike in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. And we have seen in our budgets, the dollar doesn't stretch as far as it used to. So I'll use the example, insurance, utilities, but certainly the costs of goods, the cost of services, buying them post-COVID versus pre-COVID. I think even when we saw the presentation from the Conservation Authority, they mentioned that their cost estimate on the building in 2018 changed by 27%. If again, don't quote me, but if I remember correctly, because it piqued my mind, everybody is dealing with inflation. You guys have all worked in various different businesses, owned your own businesses. I don't know that in recent times we've had this type of flux, but certainly there's been some really negative impacts, and the burden on our operational budget, capital budget, core services, some of the elective services. It's something that we will need to ask questions, talk to each other about, and ultimately make some decisions so that we can go forward. Second, is the 2018 to 2023 legal issues. So as I mentioned, and again, I promise this wasn't pre-planned, but we're talking about Centerville earlier. We've known about this since 2020. There's some legal files. I believe it's in this roughly around 20 of them that there's some pretty significant issues that we need to bring forward. We need to make some decisions, action, and kind of complete these files, but it's not without a significant cost. And so some of that you'll see we'll bring forward when we talk about fees and charges. We're introducing a new fee and charge for some of these types of land titles and things like that, just in order to make sure that we're covering off some of our costs related to some of these legal issues where we can. Lastly, we have a trend, and it was something that we spent some time talking about during our workshop, the difference, if you will, between the operational and capital budgets. And we took a big lens, almost 10 years back, to be able to see that within the, I'll say 100% of the budget each year, we've been kind of shifting towards a different balance between how much of that total budget goes to capital and to operational. And I do believe it's incredibly important to put money away to save it for those capital projects that cost more than we can afford in any one year. We absolutely need to stick with that plan. But I do think that there's room for us to discuss and potentially land on in a way forward in a similar for operational, so that we are also kind of working within a service standard, and that we don't let it drop, that service standard drop, for the sake of, putting away some more dollars for the capital. So that's the highlights for managing risks. The grand finale, I think, of all slides is just next. So again, just talking about how do we comprehend the budget in general, as well as understand what's the impact right now as we look at it. So important to state that right now, included in the 2025 draft are only the core services. We've not put in all of the elective services. Those are the ones, again, we just want to check in with you, align to make sure that these are important for 2025, or if there's any room to move them into out years, or whether or not we want to challenge them in any sort of way. So that being said, based on the 2024 impact assessment, the property at 100,000 for the 2025 budget, that would mean an increase of 6.33%, an annual increase of about 58.70. So I liked that Tim also used a similar assessment for his example. We used 600,000. So if your property right now is assessed at 600,000, the draft budget with just the core services in would be 6.33%, which would mean an annual tax increase of $352.20. Or if you're paying it on the quarterly, that would be $88.05. This budget does recognize inflation. So the core services have been adjusted to, like I say, include that increase that we know has happened, so that we get ourselves up on page. I know that Marla from OPP is going to be joining us on the 25th, but I do think using the example of OPP is a great one. We again, I know we're going to have a lot of discussion, and certainly I'm not going to try to debate why OPP would be on the elective services. I'm not suggesting we don't want it. It was just because that we have seen across Ontario, some of the municipalities, I'll specifically say Wasaga Beach, has challenged how they will handle their change in OPP. So that meaning that contract for them also went up significantly. Our contract went up. Val, correct me. How much did the contract go up? 26%. So the contract value went up 26%, which made it a total impact to the tax levy at 14.44%. Sorry, go ahead, Val.
Total.
Yes,
So like
yes.
an overall increase would be like a 3% compared to last year.
That's right. So the total amount would be the 14 on the budget, but the increased portion is only 3% today. Yeah. That also includes that we pay for facilities with OPP. So it's the, services and space or facilities for them. But again, I just want to talk to what we're seeing, and I think, again, it was even in the example of the Conservation Authority, is that, again, businesses, we all know that inflation has impacted, and we're seeing people, companies, organizations looking at how much longer they can absorb that within their services or operationally or on their capital before it starts to really deteriorate the quality of the service. And how will they then also handle it? So I think that we're seeing some of that here with OPP. I think they're looking at, everything from hiring recruits, training, knowing that people want more enhanced services. This contract is the same contract, so I do want to be clear. We got this before we got the survey results back. Or sorry, I shouldn't say that. I think we did have the survey results back saying we want enhanced services, but we got this very shortly and around the same time. And this was for the same service, but a really steep increase. So this also slide provides, I think, an example of how we will have each one of the elective. So for the second day, the 15th, and potentially on the 19th, we can have discussion as we go through this opportunity. Call it an opportunity with OPP contract. Like I say, Wasaga has chosen to try to negotiate, and they have chosen to go back to OPP and say, how about 5%? I don't know how that is going, and I'm certainly totally open, obviously. I'm even having conversations this week. And Marla will be here, like I say, on the 25th to talk about the quarterly report as well. I hope to be able to ask her and to prepare for any questions regarding this increase. But it's these types of impacts across the whole entire budget that has got us having to work together and to figure out how we want to go forward with our services. Just to close, I recognize that we've certainly had optimistic and cheerier years for a budget. But I do think we've all said, we came into this role, or I came into this role, and you looked for a change so that we could, I'll say, assure that we aren't hiding things, aren't putting things aside, that we're actually dealing with the issues as and when they come up. And so I hope that although these are tough decisions, that we work together and we solve these issues today, and that we don't put them off. We don't try to hide them. And, at the end, I think, Steve, you mentioned we'll still be friends. I agree. It's going to be some tough conversations, but I think we need to have them and we need to have them here. That's the other part. We need to do it together. It's not back at my desk at 10 o'clock. It's not, bits and pieces for you guys to see. It's all of us in it. So I just wanted to, like I say, that's the end of this brief part. I know on last Friday, we spent 2.5 hours on a presentation, and I certainly will provide a presentation with some more of the details next Tuesday and then next Thursday as well. And I think that's all, it's already in the package, yes. So you'll have the entire presentation as part of the draft budget as you read out. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for bringing a smile to our faces at the conclusion, because there's not much to smile about in some of these numbers that we're seeing, for sure. So moving on to our consent agenda, we've only got one item on it. So pardon? Oh, I was informed that we are to debate this next week. We've got 3 days, maybe 4 set aside for it. Believe me, we've got our work cut out for us, and but we've set aside the time to do it, and we've come through this before, but never with numbers like this that we have no control over whatever. So the consent agenda, just one item, and the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve a heritage permit for 6 Parker Street East to A, demolish and reconstruct a residential addition to the dwelling in the same general footprint and similar design as per the submitted drawings, subject to the following condition: that the exterior facade be clad with similar brick to the main portion of the dwelling. So a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor, Councillor Forder and Councillor Greenfield. Discussion. Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, so when we look at the previous structure, it seems like soil erosion was a big contributing factor to the integrity of the addition. So I just want to know, how are we going to be able to address the soil erosion in the future for the new addition if it's approved? What sort of are the steps involved in making sure that that's taken care of?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the building code addresses that type of materials that you can build on. It dictates the compaction and how that material is suitable for construction. When you're doing construction, they'll have to manage the water away from the building to prevent erosion from under the existing. But the most important thing is building on undisturbed or engineered soil and making sure that the construction is proper the first time. I suspect that the building is sagged for a number of different reasons, but I would just be speculating at this point.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. 2 weeks ago, I remained silent on this. And I know I made a mistake. I should have said my piece. I don't think council should be in the position to tell people what to do with their houses. The house that we're talking about did have wood siding on the half of the porch. It was there. The neighbors have wood siding on some of their houses. And I just don't believe it's our direction to tell people what to do with their house.
And I can tell you, and others will too, that we're guided here by the Downtown Heritage District guidelines, and they do call for the use of brick in this kind of an application. So I'm positive that our Heritage Committee, Advisory Committee, had it dealt with this, would have given us that recommendation. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And maybe people like Harley and Brandon will speak up about that. But I understand how you feel, but it isn't, I want to be clear, it's not this council telling a homeowner what to do. It's this council upholding the plan that we have put in place. Anyone else have any comments on that? Okay, I put my part in there. Um, any other discussion or will we, yes, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So along the lines of what the discussion on any application inside the Heritage District. And the Heritage Committee looks at someone or someones who are wishing to do something on their property. And I need to feel assured that when persons make these applications, first of all, they know that they are now inside this district. They know where their property is. It's inside this district. And so when they come to the presentation of what they would like to do, this comes before council as it's a recommendation that we have listened to what the Heritage District has looked into, the conversations that have transpired outside of council. They are working with individual proponents, and then there's a recommendation that does come to us. So what I need to know for myself with what you've just said, Mr. Mayor, and we did have a training session on the heritage impacts on it. Would we be in an illegal position to say, we've listened to the homeowner and for a variety of reasons, is it council's legal ability to say, we think for the other information that we're receiving, that the recommendation, not just on this one here, but on any application that comes before us, because it's inside a heritage district and because it's part of the Ontario Heritage Act, would we be in an illegal position to say contrary?
Do you wish to answer that, CAO?
I don't know that I have, I don't have the most extensive background, but I'm just thinking back to what Ross had mentioned, which I do believe is true, because we've already put in our heritage rules, if you will, that then following through with them, it's not so much, I don't know that the word illegal feels right. I guess that's the part that I'm struggling with, but certainly the recommendations are to follow along. I don't know, to be honest with you, what course of action we have if they don't follow along. And I don't know, Bart, if you can speak to that in this particular municipality or in others that you've worked in.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up, it really falls to how you want to define your committees and how you want to hold them up and the guidelines to those. And if you undermine those, then every time someone wants to change course, then you will have to deal with different opinions on that, and that can become difficult. In this case, where heritage is, it's fairly straightforward, fairly strict in the code that you have to have, this process and these, you have to have some type of guideline, and you have those things, and to deviate from that undermines that process. So I'm not saying you can't deviate from it, because I think there's definitely times where you'll have to deviate from it, but to do it, those would have to have extenuating circumstances to deviate from it and a good reason. It just can't be because I wouldn't want to, or I don't like that.
And
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, and there's another important point that I should have not missed, and that is this recommendation comes from our planning staff. It is the staff report that came from the planning department, and we have people in there who are well versed in the heritage district plans and recommendations. So I think that to go against the motion is to, I think, both disregard what our staff is recommending and what we know the Heritage Committee would be recommending, and that is upholding the integrity of our downtown business and heritage district. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think it's also important for the consistency because we've had other homes and businesses within our downtown heritage district, and we have provided direction to them to work within the guidelines that are provided through the Heritage Act. So I think we can't deviate from that in this or any case. So in this case, we agreed to require replacement of the brick as close to original as possible. And I think there's another large heritage home in that district, and there was a lot of work done by the committee and by council on several occasions to try to make sure that that house maintained its original heritage character. So I think, when we've been, as strict as we can in those other circumstances, we can't come back to this one and say, it's okay if you deviate. I think it's just the consistency to me is really important.
I understand that we have the consultant for the proponent. I believe she's online. And
The applicant is online.
Oh, the
virtually,
applicant
yeah,
is
if
online,
council
yes.
has any questions. Yeah.
So if you wish to speak, why give you that opportunity now.
I know, everything is, fine on my end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or discussion? I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the motion? And that is carried. Thank you. And then we've got an item for consideration here, the recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw 2024-52, being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw 60-2009 to remove the holding provision 1 from the lands known as 215 Cedar Avenue in the municipality of Meaford, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Greenfield. Any discussion, any questions on that, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. And just a small technical question. The signing authority here, that our clerk, Matt Smith, is no longer with us. So is that still appropriate that his name be on this document, or should that have been changed to yourself, Alex?
No, that should have been changed. Thank you for that. I'm gonna have to take a peek and make sure that gets changed. Yep, I'll make sure to change that, but council can proceed with discussion and moving on, but I'll be sure to change it.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now I need a motion to move into committee of the whole at 3:12 this afternoon. Mover and seconder, Councillor Urick and Deputy Mayor Keaveney. And the first item here is our short-term accommodation project. So here are the recommendations. The Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford either, 1, direct staff to maintain the current regulatory structure of short-term accommodations, tracking records of related bylaw complaints, and monitor the state of short-term accommodation within the municipality of Meaford, or Number 2, direct staff to track records of related bylaw complaints, monitor the state of short-term accommodation within the municipality of Meaford, and to work with STA platforms to address terms of service and policy compliance issues. Or Number 3, direct staff to create a return on investment cost analysis for a short-term accommodation licensing registry and a bylaw for the municipality of Meaford. The required components of the licensing program, including software purchase, process mapping, service level adoption, new staffing allocation and fire prevention, building inspections, business licensing, bylaw enforcement, create a short-term accommodation licensing committee, and all other necessary to launch the program. So that is what is before us. Now, did we get this on the table here yet? Okay. Sorry, short memory today. Who wants to start this discussion? It's an important one for sure. Councillor Euring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, this is an important one. So I'm going to start with the fact that, and I'm totally sympathetic to our previous speakers. Thank you for coming out today. I will kind of say one thing contrary to one of those maybe is I think there is very strong inherent value in having these things. They are part of our accommodation. We don't have that 78-room hotel yet. So it is contributing to economic development and tourism. Having said that, unfortunately, there are always bad actors that make it seem worse than it is. I don't believe that they're all problematic by any way, shape, or form, or even the majority of them are, but there are ones that are problematic. So that's going to carry me into, I'm probably going to, I don't know whether this is going to be an actual motion for deferral or a recommendation of a fourth point, because staff has come in with three. And what I'm going to say first is, in there, you showed the graph that said in 2024, we've had 11 registered complaints. And my bit of a problem with that is, and we've espoused the value of polls for the budget, for example. Well, we did a poll for short-term rentals 2 years ago when this first came up. And even at that time, there were only about 16 actual complaints registered in those polls. The question was, I've experienced a noise complaint with the noise coming from a short-term accommodation property. And the responses were 108 times. Yes, people said 108, or approximately once a year was 52 versus not, which was 308. Second one was another similar, it wasn't a noise complaint, but another problem that 94 respondents said yes. I've had a concern relating to short-term accommodation property in which the police had to be called. 45 said yes. So there are many, many cases. Just because they're not getting reported to council or staff doesn't mean they don't exist. So I think that's disingenuous of us to sort of lean on that as saying that's a big part of the whole messaging. So going back on that, the three options available, Mr. Lawson very eloquently put some of that stuff. Number one is, I don't think that's palatable. We can't do nothing. Number two is the problem again being with the actual platforms. I know, and again, council has heard from many people as well on these, and there have been people who have went repeatedly to these platforms with no satisfaction either. So at the end of the day, it's not even a situation where you can just say, go deal with them because they'll take care of it for you, because that's not working either. Point three comes down to finances, and that's a pretty big number. So that is even more problematic looking at the increases we're talking about in the budget. Why I want to bring up a fourth one, and I'm going to credit a couple people on the Growing Our Economy committee who came in and said, have we looked at, and we did, in all fairness, we directed staff to kind of look at the general municipalities around us as comparators, because there was some logic to that. Having said that, they said if you looked at the London model, very fascinating actually, because what that model says, and this is going to come back, so that number that was in there was $500,000 was going to be the impact. One line in there said it was going to be first year heavy, so there's going to be a lot of setup. There's going to be hiring staff. There's going to be a lot of inspection. There's going to be a lot of components that are going to be required to do all this, and that's going to make it top heavy in the first year. But then it said that was going to be required annually. That didn't make sense to me, and I'll let you respond to that one in a minute, because I'm not sure why it would be that number thereafter, because if you've done all the heavy lifting and if you're just relicensing places that have been inspected, I don't think anybody's out there doing annual inspections every year on these. But the London model said something that was really interesting. They charge about $200 a year. And the biggest one is, will my STA be inspected? And it says, the City of London will rely on a sworn declaration made by the provider that all federal, provincial, and municipal laws and bylaws are being followed. If you are uncertain as to your responsibilities regarding other bylaws and bylaws such as the Ontario Building Code, the City of London zoning bylaw, etc., staff will be happy to answer your questions and direct you to the proper authority. Inspections may be required where a second unit is being used as an STA in a house, or where the unit or bedrooms are in a basement, or if a complaint is received or based on the officer's discretion. So if there's already a model out there where they're showing that the onus is on them, and obviously we're all worried about insurance aspects here and covering our collective derrieres, then if this model exists and it is accepted, that would seem to me that that would be potentially a logical cost-saving methodology where we don't have to go into heavy inspection costs, which is going to be a big part of that cost. When that number came around to that 500,000, I kind of wish it had been more than just saying 500,000. I think it was something like 330,000 with staff. It didn't really say in there how much of that was going to be new bylaw, which we're going after anyway. And so the new bylaw officers aren't even going to just be for that, but we will have hopefully more bylaw support. But it didn't really break that down. And I think that would also be necessary for the conversation to determine exactly how that's being spent and allocated and what percentages, because are they apt? Can we cut there as well? Don't know. But I think this goes a long way towards being a way to, because what I want to see, I'm getting my point. What I want to see at the end of the day is we have no control mechanism. If point two takes it to the platforms, we need a 3-strike rule so that if we have bad actors, we can say everybody is licensed and we can take that away because you are not being responsible as an STA owner. So that is where I want to get to without having to spend $500,000 a year. So I'll let you kind of answer the monetary aspect of that. But where I'm going here is it may either be a deferral to go back and look at this model, or it may be a fourth point in here in terms of 1, 2, 3, or 4, this model defining this kind of responsibility back on the SDA owner to take much of the onus off us for inspection and responsibility.
I mean, you're more than welcome to speak first, but I'm sure we all have like 1,000 little points and conversations, but I think a couple of just high level pieces. And to your point, is there a fourth? What we tried to do with the third, if you will, and especially I just want to point out by having that advisory committee specifically, because one of the top recommendations from the county when they looked over all of them, the number one was no size fits all. But the municipality should have an approach that works for them. And so I think, and there are factors that they highlight is the size and the complexity of the solution can come with great cost implications. And any solution needs to be carefully thought and costed out. So that was their number one. And to your point, I think I was misspoken earlier. There was I didn't think that we had covered off London, but it actually was covered off by the county when they did their review. So although we didn't pull because we pulled others, and we even went to Saskatoon and to Victoria, BC. We traveled across Canada to kind of get a really broad, because it does feel like a one size fits all approach isn't right. And so one of the concerns and one of the elements that I just want to make sure we're kind of all clear, there's kind of no day in 2025 where we are all in on the cost. So I think the cost element was a way to start putting some numbers on a page, being really realistic. And we used references to Tiny Township, to Blue Mountains, Georgian Bluffs, Collingwood, so we did use some of our neighbors, but they're not like us. And so I think, just kind of seeing where the recommendations overall of how to do this program, seeing how many varieties there actually are. If you took a full year of the first year, that's what you're looking at. But the fact that we're already trying to cut corners and reduce staff makes me feel not super comfortable, because I feel like the bad actors take time and it is effort. the good ones, you're right, they come in, they pay their license, and they know they need to have, fire doors. They know they need to have a fire, extinguishing systems. Like they are already doing the due diligence and they sign off on that because we're not telling them, hey, the speed limit is. They know there's a speed limit. But I think we might not be, all of the short-term accommodations might not be up to speed on that. I think there's actually a pretty good group here that may be a little bit more using it like a supplemental income. And for those folks, I think that's where working as an advisory group so that we do the proper education before we ask them to sign away the whole, understanding. We can't, again, that's kind of like the future folks. Option two, and I'll just give some rationale of why we were thinking option two, because there's a bit in the charter where it jumps from assuming the root cause and fixing the root cause all in the same. And there's this assumption that a new program would change the bad actors of today. And that doesn't seem to be the case with programs. So we looked at zoning, we looked at bylaws. Some of these are not effective. They're no more effective as they are right now with bylaw services. That if they're already using the house the way they are, it's very unlikely that we can change the zoning and they have to change their purpose. Those bad actors, we need to tackle them in a slightly different way. So number two was an option for us to do different. So although sounds like you've heard reports where it's not been working with the platforms hasn't been advantageous, that's not the same as what we've got from, I believe it was Tiny Township, but I'd have to ask a couple that I didn't even know that was as much of an option. Or like you, if I had just heard that on the street, I might have thought, yeah, as if they're answering, Kim Buckham at Meaford, right? But I think they have also come under quite a bit of pressure. And not just from, big municipalities and cities, but actually from the people that use their services. So hitting them back, I think, if you will, is somewhat of a logical next step. It doesn't, and this is where I feel like, again, if you want to defer, I think there's maybe a combination of 2 and 3. I'd hate to let go an opportunity where we could, do some more enforcement for those bad actors and get to that. Because I do think that's an element that I'm hearing here today, that I don't know that a new program will satisfy that need fast enough.
Yeah, no problem. It is heavy on the front end, so that 388 is heavy just for the first year. It takes in like almost 100% of a fire inspector. It takes almost 100% of building. It takes 100% of sort of a program coordinator. So that is heavy on the front end. So that would be reduced over. We wouldn't know exactly how that would be reduced, but you would see some savings as you move forward. It would get easier and easier. Another important point is there have been some recent implementations of these policies, most notably Collingwood and Blue Mountains, and they have phased in this in a way that they pulled forward the reserves. They're spending their reserves to offset, so they're keeping the actual licensing and application fees lower in those first years, and then ramping them up significantly, I may add. It starts, at around $200 to $400 in the first year, but then it jumps way up to $2,000. So it's not, that's, they're phasing them in nicely. I'm not sure when that change will happen, but that's what the plan is. So there are quick advances now in technology as well. There's new service providers. Granicus is the one that we spent some time with, and we've had a few sessions with them. And they basically they have 7 different modules. Tiny Township subscribe. I think it's six modules. Excuse me. Tiny Township subscribes to all 6 of their modules, and I think it's the town of Blue Mountains where Collingwood only has one of their. They only use one. I think it's their application process that one of the 2 use. So. It is a very effective tool. They're getting better and better at solving these issues. So they're we have the ability to be more reactive as we move with this. The townships are growing. Georgian Bluffs just in the last 30 days, went from just they're voluntary to March the 1st, they're going into a licensing. So we are a little more agile than we have been in the past. But what the most important thing with option number 3 is that there will be an expense, and we just need to be careful with the balance. It is a real specific balance. We are not Collingwood. We are not the town of Blue Mountains. We are Meaford, and thankfully we are Meaford. It's so we're proud of that, but with that comes sensitivities to price, sensitivity to licensing fees, sensitivity to MAT taxes, and we have it's just it's very specific to us, and we need to customize a solution for Meaford. And so that may take some time for us to figure out what that balance point is, how much of expense we can bear, how much the taxpayers want to take on, how much our STA operators, how much they can afford, or will it be a deterrent if we put it too high? These are all conversations that we'll have to have and pick that nice balance where we cover off all of the, taking into account all of the benefits of STRs and also the cons, and try and protect against those. I do want to thank the people who spoke today. It was very passionate and compelling, and we are very sympathetic to that. We don't want that to happen here in our community, so we do want to find solutions. And number 2 that we suggested isn't just a patsy, status quo plus. There actually are some steps that we will be able to have greater relationships with our operators. There's 232 or thereabouts. So we would, starting with anyone that's on our list, we'd start there with some education. We'd start with some good neighbors and kind of guidebooks, if you will, with the operators, with the residents, and with the guests that come. So there is more involvement in that step number 2. So we're committed to trying to solve this.
Thank you. All good, and I totally appreciate both sides of the fence on this. My question is number 1 and 2, and so your response there to me is number 3 kind of heavily still relies into kind of the inspection aspect of making sure people are doing whatever. Where I have a problem with that is if we ended up going with 1 or 2, they're still not getting inspected. So there's no change in that. So we're letting it fly as they are regardless on 1 and 2. So it doesn't seem to be about inspection being the big thing on the table here. It's about the cost of the inspection. And if a municipality that already has been doing this for 2 years, I would just think we should be asking them at least first to say, how successful has that worked for you? What kind of problems have evolved out of that? Before we dive into a scenario where we look at some of the other ones who maybe haven't also considered, oh, there's a way of doing this without going really heavily into that kind of model, that we should at least look at it. All the research I've done with London so far, there hasn't been a lot of pushback. And it seems to have worked. I don't know why, and I would like to find out before I spend $388,000 on stuff that, we might not have to if we're putting the onus on the people.
I'd like to hear some more opinions, and we'll come back to you, Rob. I think Tony is first, and I'll come back to you, Deputy Mayor. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have questions that align with what's being obviously talked about. And basically, my concern is the composition of item number 3 for recommendation. So with all due respect, we do not need a program coordinator. We don't have a program coordinator to collect taxes. You're sent your taxes, they come in, either drop it off in the mail, come into the office, they pay their taxes. They know they have to pay their taxes. It's an obligation. So if we advertise this, that there is a fee to be had, they know they pay a fee, they're going to come in and do it. Otherwise, again, they become non-compliant right there by not having the license. The other aspect of this is I don't think we need a committee. People are going to decide with their own properties whether they would like to do this or whether they would like not to do this. And so when they come in, they've decided that they would like to do this. The number that was put together here of $276.75 is a very interesting number. Wasn't 250, nor was it 500. That kind of number, I believe, rests with the council of the municipality of Meaford, that when we're going to do something to put some teeth into this, that people, when they have a complaint, like our guest speakers have said, what does it boil down to? They've been calling the police. We need bylaw, which means people, which means weekend, which means a difference, because that's when the party happens. It's on the weekend. They're in party mode and they come for the enjoyment, and the neighbors have a problem on their hands, which they do not want. The good actors can be beside somebody right now, and their neighbors might not even know, because they are good and they're doing it right. They have people who are on site. They have people that they can call. There is someone who's taking responsibility for the actions at that residence. What I'd like to see is that we have a licensing fee that we put in our budget. We're going to need more bylaw, and their job description has got to be weekend. You take this on, you're going to be on weekend. And this is where this is going to be at. We have no teeth for our friends and neighbors who are suffering because of the bad actors. So I would like to see that we have a fee, that they are registered, that they come in and they pay their fee, and that this business about the inspections and the stuff like that, I don't even know if our fire department, with all due respect to our fire department, gets around to inspect other places right now on a yearly basis. Why would we put an emphasis on this? We don't. We've got people who are renting places whose septic systems are designed for a family of 4, and you get far more than that on the weekend. So again, they're taxing what a person comes in for the building permit, and they say, how many people are living here? How big's your septic system got to be? They don't even have the right size septic system. So anyway, I didn't care much for how the composition was laid out. And my final point is $30,000 for a vehicle. I thought we were with enterprise. And if you lease a vehicle, even if you're paying $1,000 a month, it's $12,000 a year. You got it listed here, $30,000 for a vehicle. Are we buying a vehicle? I didn't care much for the composition of how this added up to be well over $1.5 million, so that council may have been a little shy, knowing the constraints of the budget that we're facing, to add another $1.5 million plus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you just want to comment?
Right.
Bart, do you want to just comment on some of those thoughts around the?
Just a little clarification. Septic systems aren't designed by the number of people that are in the space. It's actually by the size of the space, number of bedrooms, and number of bathrooms. So there is integral things that we do that actually have kind of a process, and it's not just mashed. Like, it's not like we just don't come up with stuff. And so when we talk about bylaw officers, or we talk about building inspectors, and liability, we can't designate liability by forms and taking that responsibility by someone signing a waiver that just opens us up for more liability, to be honest. We have to go do the inspections. If we're going to get into this business, we have to do those things. And if we're creating secondary dwellings within a existing single dwelling, and we're making that single dwelling into 2 dwellings, then we need to deal with fire separations, and we need to deal with life safety issues. And those are really, really important issues that, I spent the last 30 years dealing with. And we just can't kind of hodgepodge it. We either you're into this game or you're out of this game. And yes, people do work out there. We know that they do work out there without getting a building permit. There are bad actors out there. And sometimes people do it unwillingly. They don't know that they're supposed to do what they do. It's like driving down a highway, you think you're doing the right thing at driving at 80K, but you realize all of a sudden it's 60 and you're like slamming on the brakes because you don't want to get a ticket or be silly. So, but, and I think as us in the building department and in bylaw and in planning, we all are empathetic to those moments where we make a mistake and we try to get correct and try to make the right thing to do forward. But that doesn't mean that we can turn a blind eye to the people who aren't following the rules of the building code or aren't following the laws that this council passes. And you want to get into this business, you have to tool it correctly, because there's so many other businesses that we are into that we don't have the tools. And you're going to see that in the budget time. We are going to have a firm conversation about planning because we're in crisis. And you guys don't really see it because you're not there, but we see it every day. And we're going to talk about bylaw, and we're going to talk about, the things that go on in there. And so I can only express to you what I know, and you guys make up those really hard decisions, because this budget is about a series of hard decisions that weren't made in the past and weren't made considering the future. And those are now coming to roost. And that's going to be tough. And when we talk about this type of program, if you want to get into this business, there's no half measures about it. It's not about, leasing a vehicle or buying a vehicle. It's about hiring people and trying to fill in these niches and trying to get it organized so that it actually operates. And I think, I hear the complaints, I hear the noise. Dozen, the 2, the 3 dozen, does that compensate? What number? Is it $25,000 a complaint? $50,000 a complaint? How do you balance that to make it actually rational? What number do you use in your head to say that this works or this doesn't work? Anyways, sorry for my rant. I appreciate it.
So you wanted to comment, Kim?
Just further, I just wanted to make sure, because I do believe, like, Bart does see it firsthand, maybe on a slightly different level. And I think there's a comment too of why aren't we don't have business licensing. So to your point, that's another business, right? But we don't go into the McGinty's and say, what you should be looking like. And we haven't gotten into that business at this time. So I know that people do come in, and we do have other people there to help them with their taxes. And we would have people and or software that people could purchase their licensing. I think it does come to the level of effort of coordinating, and maybe Eric, you can talk to the coordinator at Collingwood that you recently spoke to. She really shared, it's been about 3 years she's been developing the program. So do you have?
Yeah, she's a dedicated employee brought on specifically for the licensing. This is in Collingwood, and I think they've just released it as of maybe it's today, but just recently. And she said it had taken her about 2.5 years to get it ready to release. So it is a longer process. As I was saying, I think that we have made some advances and have closed the gap on that time. I think a lot has happened in the last 2.5 years, thanks to people like the different municipalities that have pushed it. But it does take some time, and it does take people, and we don't, we have problem currently having, the staffing to get things done and getting out to planning and get building, and we're struggling with those now. So to add this workload, it's going to be, you're going to need dedicated people. It may not be, the numbers might not be exact. It might not be 30,000 for the car. It might not be 380 but the concept is there that there's going to be an expense, and we're going to need to put people there evenings and weekends. As you said, after midnight, we don't have staffing right now. So if you wanted to have an enforcement officer going out after midnight on a Friday or in the middle of the night, that is going to be a dedicated staff that we don't have right now. So in order for us to be responsive, then we're going to have to add some dollars there. And so how we get there is there's going to be an expense.
I think Deputy Mayor is next, and Harley, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a lot of good points have been made so far, and we've been looking forward to this discussion for a long time. And I want to start with, I guess, an honest personal comment. The budget framework was above this in our agenda, and I got that far and was in shock. And recognizing that we're facing a nearly 21% increase that we can't do very much about. And then coming to this one and seeing the expense of it, I was in an immediate state of, no way, we can't do this year. But after a couple of days, I got my feet back on the ground and recalled. Certainly during the last election timeframe, as has been referenced today, that this was, again, the number one issue that was brought forward during that time period. We did, as a council, made that a priority. So I think to honor our strategic priorities, we have to go forward and we have to deal with a bylaw and recognize it's going to take some time, but I'm hoping we can minimize the delays as much as we can, recognizing the great work that's been done in other communities and what we've learned over the time frame that we've been waiting for this bylaw. But for me, a lot of it is about the safety of these units, because right now we don't know whether they're fire hazards or whether they have safe steps or anything of that nature. So I think it's important, if we're going to have these in our community, and 232 is a lot, and there probably is more than that, that we need to know that they are safe for our visitors. And I certainly agree with the points that Eric made, specifically that we have to have a Made in Meaford solution, and that's what we're going to come to. I do have a call in to the good folks in London and hoping to hear back from them. I know a couple of years ago, and I see Chris is in the audience, he'll remember that there were conversations with people at Airbnb who offered to support us and assist us in the creation of a bylaw. So I trust that they will have the opportunity to participate in this process and provide their guidance and expertise. I also quite like a couple of things from the Grey Highlands model, in recognizing that they do have a step-by-step handbook, and London also does have on their website a really clearly laid out set of Q&As, which I think is helpful. But coming back to Grey Highlands, I really liked this point, that all licensed properties provide a code of conduct for their guests. And I thought that's a starting point, that we have some consistency there and everybody knows what's appropriate, and that gives us some feet to stand on, because I agree we need 24/7 coverage, and potentially one bylaw officer attending a party at 2 or 3 in the morning isn't appropriate. Maybe we have to have 2 to make sure that that's a safe work environment. So there is work to do, but I want to see us make a decision on this hopefully today and start moving forward and giving staff the ability to go forward, continue their research, and put a plan together for us and get it back to us as soon as possible.
Who is next? Harley, do you want to go ahead and then I'll come back?
Thanks, Your Worship. Well, we have been waiting this now for actually over 2 years. In many points. First of all, going back to something that was said earlier today, I've learned over the years that for every one official complaint, whether it be a phone call, email, or something in writing, it represents at least 10. And so, yeah, there's a lot more going on out there. As far as I'm concerned, all Airbnbs should be registered. I really don't care if they're 2 or 3 weeks a year or if they're 24/7, 12. They're all in it for the same purpose, and that's to raise some money. We need inspections. Inspections by both the fire department and the building department. As far as I'm concerned, if it takes the building department 4 hours to inspect a place, then the owner gets charged for 4 hours inspection. Put a price per hour on it. Same with the fire department. What's so difficult about that? We need fees to cover all municipalities. Residents are rented out to create revenue for the owners, and currently the municipality and the neighbors are the ones who lose out. We have declared ourselves a community of safety and well-being. Well, what are we talking about? If we are allowing some individuals to permit activity, shall I say, that is obnoxious and threatening to their neighbors. How can we call ourselves a community of safety and well-being? Come on. I'm really tired of hearing the soft touch for the STA owners. You know, we don't want to be too harsh here. We don't want to be too harsh there. We don't want to, come on. They're in it for one reason. And the people who use their houses as homes are the ones who are suffering. When I first saw this report after the budget report, I thought, is there a coincidence that they're coming up on the same day, on the same agenda? To me, there's a simple answer for this. If we indeed start to regulate them, start to develop a bylaw, let's make it that it is not going to be cost prohibitive, that the municipality is going to get their money back. Not advocating making money on it. That's not what municipalities are in business for. But let's cover our costs. I think of the three options, to me, the first two are no options. Basically, that's what we've been doing for 2 years. The third one, that's the only one that remains, and that's the one that I would suggest we go forward with. Are we going to get this completely solved today as far as regulations, inspections, so on and so on and so forth? No, but we need to get something established, and today's the day.
Thank you. Councillor Forder.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And through you, very good discussion. One of my big concerns, I know these numbers are rough, but the salaries and benefits at $388,000. I think it also is important to tie in that in Appendix 2, Grey Highlands notes that it takes an average of 15 to 20 hours of staff time per application to license an STA properly from the time of application to final approval, which includes all prerequisite inspections. We have 232 STRs times 15 hours. That's almost 3,500 hours of staff time just to process and inspect. So I assume that is going to be a large chunk of the salaries and benefits, but I'd really like to just hear some more explanation of how that number was created. Because of course that is by far the largest cost with regards to option number 3. And with regards to phasing in licensing fees, why phasing? If we want to cost recover this program, I don't want to make money like Councillor Greenfield says, but as long as we cover our costs, why do we need a phasing in program for licensing? Why can't we just, and what would be the full licensing fee as well? So maybe before I get into, I have tons of notes, but let's just start with that and appreciate your comments. Thank you.
The breakdown was based on a couple different models that we took from Tiny and from the Tunnel Mountains, are calling one of the two, and basically it was 4 staff that were there. That's the bylaw officers, and for the 24/7 coverage, 1 person dedicated to running the program, and then there was the additional fire and building officers that were required. So that and as I said, if it's not 388, it might be less than that, but it's a placeholder. This whole report number 3 was just to start this conversation and get us to the point where we're talking about exactly these issues. So I don't think we need to get into the actual specifics of the numbers. It's just a conversation. So in terms of the cost recovery, if you took that divided, someone could do quick math for me. Yeah, but $2,000 per. So that would be a significant number for many of our STRs, and you likely are going to deter deter people from that number is probably going to cut in half or something like that. And if that's what this council wants, then that would be that might be the result. So yeah, it really is a cost benefit analysis. It really isn't. It's where you put the emphasis. Is it on economic development? Is it on your community? Is it the negative things that we've all heard about and we all know about? Is that the priority? So the question is, where does this council of the day feel where the priority is? Maybe Harley could add this as next act of his play.
I
Next
think
time.
to me, the question is, are we going to take option 3 or are we going to create option 4?
I was just going to say, I did check with the clerk. So again, if there's terms, and I hear you, Tony, that maybe you don't recommend, a committee. I do want to say that was not what Grey County and a lot of people have found, a made in Meaford version would probably be the way to go, but it might be worth maybe reading through option 3. And again, there's some things that we can't go forward with a program, but I think there are some components in here that if you, like I say, if you really feel that a committee isn't the way to go, maybe we don't go with a committee to develop the phases. But I do think, and again, this may not hit the need because we probably needed it a year ago, not a year from now. But you might need to see an actual draft of a rollout plan, because I feel like some of these technicalities, we don't want to miss the mark of meeting expectations, and it will take some time because this, is seeming to be, harder than it should. For staff timing, I would say. But I do think setting the level today, or, at least by next week, if everybody wants to, or next council meeting, if everybody wants to take it away, that's fine as well. But I just feel like we need to all be on the same expectations of what we're getting out of the program. Otherwise, I feel like the money or whatever we do won't hit the mark, and it won't, it'll just delay a level of satisfaction with this service.
Councillor Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 comments. One, the can't versus won't scenario, because you said we can't do that. London obviously is. So they're looking at a scenario where they're not actually going out and doing these inspections. They are actually putting the onus on. And it makes me wonder, because we've actually lived in the won't world for 2 years, because realistically, if something happened at one of these, they're all out there. They're public knowledge. We're basically allowing them by their existence, because we're not saying, oh, somebody has one, I need to go out there and inspect it just to make sure they're doing it right. So if something happened there, would we inevitably be liable anyway? Because when a lawsuit happens, somebody's going to sue everybody, and that could be us as well. And I'm not saying it would work, but you can be darn sure we'd be named. Secondly, you said Kim, about a business registry that we don't kind of have that. Right, we're one of the last municipalities that don't. That's not a reason not to do it. No, right. So we need to do that, because again, and Tony, you had said about, I don't think having weekends bylaw is going to make one iota of difference, because if somebody goes out there and it's an unsafe situation, they're just going to call the police anyway. Our bylaw officer is not going to be able to take strict force action because they're not allowed to. They have to call the police. So what we need is a 3-strike rule somehow, that we can mitigate the people that are problematic and eliminate them. And if you get a one-off, well, then slap wrist, don't do it again, and hopefully they learn from that. But it's the repeat offenders that we're trying to mitigate here, and you can only do that by taking out their business model. And if we don't have that a registry, we can't do that. So
Can I just insert a little bit? Granicus, the software, has a 24-hour hotline, and each STR has 1 hour to reply. to a complaint 24 hours a day. If you have a guest in there, you have to reply within 1 hour. And then there are examples of demerit points. So if we put in a demerit point system and you're not compliant in a certain way, then it's a strike against you, and then you would therefore forfeit your ability for 1 year or forfeit your ability for the next year. So that combination of the Granicus software with the demerit system would be something that we could have some teeth. Yep.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. And I'm not sure, Kim and Eric, if you can answer this, but I'll ask you anyway. You talked about this taking some time to put together. Can you put any rough amount of time to that? I mean, we're talking 3 months, 6 months, a year. How quickly can we get something underway?
For a transition plan, like how would we get there? Like an actual rollout of
An actual
what it would
rollout
actually
of
be?
an actual licensing and inspection and fees for.
I was gonna say, and that's, I think, to your point, it would be what level of scope. So if we can confirm the scope today, then I think we could come back with what would be the plan, because it is very different if we add in bits and pieces, if we, again, if we go with a bylaw through the night, if we go with the software reporting, like, I think that's where if we just landed on some of the scope, we could take away and do that next level of detail. But yeah, at this point, I can't commit to when the rollout plan would be ready, only because we just don't know the scope entire yet. And then we'd have to also just confirm what the 2025 priorities are as well. So we would, again, I think it would be in combination with all the other deliverables that we're looking from the economic development team for 2025. So it would be in combination, because primarily it'll sit with Eric and his team.
Quick follow-up, Your Worship, but just a reminder, this is a strategic priority for this council, so I hope it rises, to the top of the list.
And that's exactly what, that's what is, that again is why we're talking about it today. It's its own piece, because we do want to get to this. And if it is still what you guys want in 2025, then that's the deliverable.
Can we say that the scope would be the London model? Does that make any sense? Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors, I think we've got a councillor here by the name of Councillor Uhrig, who has been giving this some deep thought. And Councillor Uhrig, you said about an option for or to defer. If you did that, I would second it, because this is an opening volley and how we're getting into this. So if you could take a moment or two to think about how you would formulate that, I think that we do need to come back with a fourth option. And that could be over the next couple of weeks, and then we can get it back to us again. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. I was hoping to get my 2 cents worth in here. Diane Hilliard gave us a speech, and it sounded like the Explorer from CF West from years gone by. It was really good. Robert, excellent presentation. Rob, ditto. This counselor, he doesn't argue with the figures, 300,000, 500. That's what it's going to be. I know it. I don't care if it's 700,000. I don't want the taxpayer to pay for it. The fees have to pay for it. I want to move forward. I think option 4 is inside option 3, is it not? It's inside there. You can play with it as you want. What this counselor wants is some way to shut the bad actors down. Education and good neighbors are not going to do it. When I was younger, I knew how to stop this, but it's not allowed anymore. Okay? But what this counselor wants is the bad actors stopped, and if it has to be a licensing thing, but I want it to pay for itself. Simple as that.
Does that give you enough direction if we approve?
Yeah, really, no. The scope is truly, and to the point why the deferral is because, yeah. And I know people have suffered through 2 years of us kind of already kind of getting to this point. But because there's something on the books already, legally on the books already, it's not that they're kind of breaking any laws, London, by doing this. So when you talk about the scope, I want to investigate all possibilities. I want to see if that is a realistic, if it made Meaford model, I want to see if that will work for us, or a dimension of that working for us in tandem with all the other research you've already done. Yes, you've got to land there. So the scope is, to Mr. Bartley's point, what does that financial end finally look like? Nobody knows, but we need to know what all the options are to get there. And it just really tweaks my curiosity that a large urban center, much larger than Meaford, has adopted something that is in legalese that they're working with. Why can't we at least entertain whether or not that would work for us? So from scope perspective, you've got literally from A to Z, unfortunately, and we need to investigate it.
It sounds to me like there are two options. There's the London model, and then there's the cost recovery neutral model that you're suggesting, one of the two.
Yes and no, because London isn't neutral, because they make money as well. They made $95,000 in fines last year because people weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. They made their actual money off their licensing fees. So it wasn't a cost neutral. They were actually making money off of it. What they were eliminating was that exorbitant initial cost of going out and doing all the inspections,
Right,
and putting a lot more of that onus on the owners, which we've been doing for 2 years already, because we've not been inspecting anybody that's got an Airbnb in this municipality. Unless there was a problem.
I think we could come back with two options. At this point, we come back with the London-ish model, whatever. We'll do some research and come back with that. And then also with the other, which is the cost recovery based on guesstimates.
So I would say that, sorry, go ahead, Martin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify. So if you have a single family dwelling and you're renting it out, you do not need to get a building permit. It's still considered a group C residential occupancy. Being the tenancy doesn't require a building permit or anything along those lines. It's when you have a single family dwelling and you add an apartment into it, then you do need to get a building permit. And that's in the Ontario Building Code, regardless. That's what it is. Now, since we've talked about the building department, when they know somebody's doing construction, be it an accessory dwelling unit or anything like that, we do follow up with those due inspections and make sure that they follow the requirements of the Ontario Building Code. And we do that quite frequently. So I just want to make that clear, that there's no messing around with that. Just because we don't drag people into court and beat them up in front of a judge every other day, we do it through a lot of different other methods that seem to be very productive and keep us in stead. So I think I don't want to get preachy again. I just want to be clear that either we don't do nothing, and B, sometimes we don't need to do anything. And when we do need to do something, we find out about something, we do follow up with it and address it. And we've been very good at that.
Yeah. If I could just respond to that, sorry, and I'm not arguing that at all. And I think you do that under the building code. You're absolutely right. What's happening now is there are blatant breaking of code. We already have a bylaw in place that says you can't have more than X amount of people, X amount of bedrooms, whatever. We know they are being broken. We're not doing anything about it. Where we are saying don't do it, which has no teeth, because it just happens repeatedly over, and it's the same people doing it over and over again. So it's not that your department isn't necessarily not doing anything right on the code aspect of it. And it's not like bylaws not trying to say to people, don't do it, but without teeth to actually say, no, you can't do this anymore. How do we actually stop somebody from doing it over and over and over and over again? And that's what's happening right now. We cannot deny that.
I need a motion here to, I just don't want to see the word deferral in anything we put out today. No deferral. We need a motion to direct staff to revisit.
Do you want to amend number 3?
I don't want to be
'Cause it-
committed to, for example, the numbers in 3, and I want to make sure that the biggest consensus here is that this program has to pay for itself. And that means,
I
we could always lower the charge, but we
I don't
can't.
think number 3 will commit you to any numbers. It's just the scope of the program.
Okay.
So we could even put at the end, and again, I don't want to dismiss that you could have 2 models. So if you,
Don't wanna
again, it
complicate
sounds,
things.
sorry,
I don't want to complicate things. I just
exactly.
want to bring it to.
But
a
I
vote
think
here.
if people want to see, I'll say a cost recovery versus a revenue generating, because I feel like those are the 2, we'll call it 2 options. One where you get revenue generating, what would that model look like and what could we deliver on that? And then one that's more cost neutral, where maybe we, kind of look for a little bit more towards that, return on at least some of the investment and get to at least a budget that could be cost neutral with those 2. And then I guess that would be coming back to some of these costs. It doesn't really matter, I think, to some of the software costs. If you have 1 unit or you have 1,000, so you pay a unit price. And so we can share with you some of those, I'll call them hard costs. Doesn't matter, like I say, if you have 1 person sign up or 10,000, it's the cost. It's kind of like the number of bylaw officers. It's more about the clock, not about how many units. So that's where some of the models that are either going to make revenue or not have some base foundational costs that we'll have to incur. It's the starting of this business. And therefore, looking at it that way, I wonder as well, just again, in respect to some of the folks we've heard and some of the others that, we've had email or send notes in, just around, I don't know that either model that we're talking about, how will address the current STRs today? Because this is a lot about, I know they'll come and sign up and they'll change, right? Or the demerit system, but it doesn't still stop them. They might just see that as the cost of them doing business. And from other municipalities, that's their experience. So they just work that into their overnight price. So I just want to kind of like thoroughly, if we want to also address that root problem, to shut them down, the bad actors, I think that we might want to say both of those models as well. How is the model actually addressing shutting down the current day bad actors? Does that make sense as well? Because I feel like that's the group behind me. Like there's all about the future, and I know that, but what about the people that are already here?
People that are already here would still have to be licensed. So it doesn't matter whether they exist now or they're going to be new ones coming in, they're going to be licensed. So, and if they turn out to be problematic with either the demerit system or 3-strike rule, at the end of the day, you can't do that anymore. If we find you're continuing to do that and we have all the neighborhood watch full on that, then the police will be called in at that point to say, no, you are not allowed to do this. It's illegal. So, I mean, to me, that's why the business registry is paramount, unless we have something in place, some kind of a licensing agreement that says you can do this under the auspices of our municipality, and now you've lost that right. There's nothing in between. You have to have it, otherwise you have zero jurisdiction to stop them, other than Airbnb shutting them down themselves. So, and how do you even prove that?
So I just
And
need,
there are, just for the record, there are 61 platforms out there. London AI scrapes them to see how many they've got. So everybody keeps saying VRBO and Airbnb. So as soon as you get kicked off Airbnb, you just go to another one who says, oh, I'm just doing it through this platform now. So it's not even like you can shut down a bad actor as simple as saying, let's do it with the platform, because they've got 60 other options they can work their way through. So.
well, the question is, can we vote on number 3, and will that satisfy council that we are getting action now and it's if it can get direction from us going forward, because this is sort of up in the air to a degree. Go ahead,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, we'll just do an amendment. And it'll be that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford proceed with option 3, because the actual motion on the table has all 3 options. So let's amend for considering the 3, and then we'll vote on the motion as amended. Does that make sense?
okay.
Okay, so mover and a seconder for the amendment, vote, and then vote on the final motion.
Moved by Councillor Euring, seconded by Councillor Bell. All in favor? And now for the motion as amended, mover and a seconder, and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Forder. All in favor? And that is carried. And thank you for the help, Alex. That helps us. And took a while, but I think we're a little closer to where we want to be as a council. There's one more item here, operations, and the recommendation is that Committee of the Whole receive report Ops 2024-12 Cook Street and William Street intersection analysis for information purposes. Mover and a seconder for this, Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield. I think that I'm a little concerned about the idea that it's for information purposes. I was hoping if we voted on this, we would act on it. So maybe, can I just ask for a little explanation of that? When it says for information purposes, does that mean that we've got to come back at some future time and say, do it?
And say, sorry, what was the last part? And say,
Do it.
do it.
Yeah, because we spent $10,000, getting the advice we knew that we already had the answer to, and now it's official. So why don't we just do it?
I think I understand, and I hope I'm not breaking any rules, that because it's for information purposes only, and I believe that it was written to say, we're doing it. It's for information.
Okay.
We heard you, we're doing it.
Perfect. So did I get a mover and a seconder here? Okay. Any other discussion? Sorry, yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I do realize this is for information, but just my comments. And I remember certainly when Councillor Bell brought this forward, but I'm just a bit hoodwinked, I think, by this one from the perspective that I owned a business on that corner for 37 years on the corner of Sykes and William, and I really didn't hear complaints all the time that I was there, 37 years. And I think I wasn't aware in the original motion that this was going to cost us nearly $10,000 to do this study. So I'm just wondering going forward, if we're in a similar circumstance, if council can be made aware of the cost of following up on a motion such as what was brought forward, because it wasn't part of the original motion that we were approving a $10,000 expenditure.
If I may, I think that's actually part of why, again, it's like we came from the same school. I really like in the 2025 budget to make sure that, we are mapping out our deliverables, and there's an associated cost probably with, again, I can't think of anything where nothing costs, maybe a hug costs nothing, kindness costs nothing, right? But other than those types of things, my guess is when there's a deliverable attached, there is a cost. And so to your point, I think we would maybe possibly, again, with that lens, look through the 2025 budget going forward, so that there is, clarity to what these types of deliverables cost, what types of program costs, because again, rarely is it for nothing. But to your point, I don't know why, I'll say why we didn't, but my guess is, if there was a cost associated or we learned of the cost throughout the process, it might be just that you told us to go get her done and people just got it done within the budget that they were already allotted. And Jessica, I don't know if you want to say more to that, but.
Through the chair, it's definitely not my intention to hoodwink anyone. It is definitely not my last name. I think that the challenge with this one particularly, and I feel like it was mentioned to me in passing too, like, well, we know the answer, but we really didn't. Like in all honesty, we can't just go about saying that an intersection is unsafe, just fix, change some signs or put some other signs, or we're not in the position to do that, because if we do make adjustments without some sort of evidence or research behind it, then we open ourselves up to, if something else happens there, then, we just moved some signs or put some new signs and hope for the best. Like I think the intention was to really look at like traffic counts, pedestrian use, like all of the things. And I'm sorry that you hadn't, maybe it's good you hadn't heard anything about the incidents, but my understanding based on frequency of inquiry, that there were quite a few. So because of all of that, I think it was in our best interest to engage with a person who does this all the time, to make sure that we're not doing anything that will get us in trouble or potentially open up any other cans of worms. Especially since some of the things that I feel like people mention casually, like just make it a four-way stop sign, isn't the best choice. Like, I think it's good coming from someone other than me sometimes to say that that's not the best, and it really helps us identify what the best choice is. It's for information because we're gonna go do it, and we want to make sure it's as safe as possible based on the best information. So I'm sorry that you felt that way, but I hope that helps understand.
And thank you. I would say that a four-way stop can actually precipitate accidents, because there's so much indecision. But no, I agree entirely with the solution that was advanced. And I can tell you the list of people who have been T-boned there and, been quite adamant about getting this fixed. So are we ready to vote on this? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. You have something from County Council, I presume?
Yes, I do, your worship, and I admit that I forgot to bring my printed sheet, so forgive me while I pull this up here. Okay.
While you're doing that, can I just let you know that I'm not sure how I deal with item D here. Is this a recommendation that is being presented to council from the ACDEV committee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this recommendation is from the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee.
Yep.
And it was placed on the agenda just further to the terms of reference, where it says this is where we can place recommendations from the committee for the review of council. It'll be a part of Councillor Uhrig report. It's not for council to debate or discuss or vote on. It's just part of Councillor Uhrig's report.
Okay. I had the pleasure of being in the audience for this and I agree with it pretty wholeheartedly.
Okay, I'm all set, your worship.
Thank you.
Grey County Council did last meet on October the 24th. A number of minutes were accepted, as well as minutes from the recent Grey Bruce Public Health Board meetings. Councillor Carlton, who chairs that, provided a verbal update celebrating the opening of the Regional Dental Clinic in Walkerton. Dr. Era has been on leave, but will return the end of November. Our deputy clerk at the county, Sarah Goldrup, will be moving on to Caledon, actually, to take a similar position there. A standing ovation recognized the contributions of Sarah. She will be greatly missed by county council and staff. In committee of the whole, Councillor Gregg from Owen Sound moved that per diem funding for alternate members of council be removed from the 2025 budget. The total cost for 2023 to the county budget for per diems for alternates was $2,871. Our Councillor Steve Bartley, who received the most votes in Meaford, is our alternate, and you have attended council. You can tell us how many times, but 2 or 3 times anyway, on behalf of either Ross or myself. So in the end, after considerable discussion, it was decided that our alternates do spend time keeping abreast with county council issues, and their presence is important should there be a weighted vote called at county council. So the motion in the end was defeated. Council ratified a proposed collective agreement with OPSU Local 299, representing staff at Grey Gables and Lee Manor. OPSU will be presenting the agreement to staff for a vote. That may have happened by now. The agreement came in under the upset limits, which demonstrates the great work of the county HR team. The total additional cost to the county for increased wages for 2024 and 2025 is $1,307,340. $1,307,340. Council discussed correspondence from Georgian College regarding changes to Canada's international student program. The Owen Sound campus welcomes several international students who support our regional workforce during their studies and who achieve a high rate of employment locally going forward. The Grey Bruce Immigration Partnership, GBLIP, collectively strives to build stronger communities through awareness, outreach, inclusion, and equity to ensure immigrants and newcomers become welcome neighbors throughout Grey and Bruce counties. And I can tell you they do a lot of really wonderful work. If you can imagine a young person coming to Georgian College and their English may not be great, it's a whole new environment, everything from the weather to, getting set up with a bank account and a place to live and a part-time job and all the rest of it. And there are people that help them through all of that process to make them feel comfortable at the college. But in any event, we're going to see fewer of those students now because of the restrictions. So it was agreed that Warden Milne will write a letter of support to the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, local MPs and local MPPs, highlighting the importance of international students to our community. And please add anything I've missed, Your Worship.
I don't think so. I certainly made a speech about how valuable our alternates are. I think then we're ready for, are there any notice of motions?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we just have to do, the
Right.
Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee report from Councillor Eurig.
Oh, I see. Oh, this is his report. Okay, all right, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee met on October 16th. I want to thank the economic development staff who provided a comprehensive fall 2024 and 2025 engagement planning strategy. Committee recommended these initiatives commended these initiatives and offered to assist however possible to achieve these goals. Committee discussed several potential programs and resources that could assist economic development for the entire municipality, including partnering with the municipality of the Blue Mountains with the Open Fields Family Tour, utilizing the new mosaic mural at the corner of Nelson and Bayfield Streets, tweaking the recent Business View magazine article to fit other tourism and informational marketing efforts, and developing a community profile for the municipality that could be used as a tool for attracting developments, doctors, businesses, tourists, newcomers, etc. The committee again asked staff about developing a process whereby relevant communication was shared with other advisory committees as many issues or potential projects overlap and could provide opportunities to work together towards a common solution or goal. And finally, the committee and staff discussed the document prepared by committee members Reed Barrett, Evelyn Dean, and Kelly Ward, which resulted in the following motion to recommend to council to direct staff to develop a community vision and priorities process that would help shape the next economic development strategic plan. And that recommendation reads, whereas the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee recommends that the municipality embark on a comprehensive and inclusive process to develop a community vision with priorities. And whereas the process to develop a cohesive vision and priorities involves utilizing public consultation, surveys, a community interview process, and meetings with key stakeholders and volunteers within the community. And whereas engaging in this work will assist the committee in establishing future recommendations for developing a more proactive economic development plan and future economic development initiatives, and therefore be it resolved that the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee recommends that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford direct staff to develop a community vision and priorities process, including the establishment of SMART goals, priorities, deliverables, milestones, and a process for reporting back on the success of these efforts. Thank you.
So can I just ask how this, how we follow up on this recommendation from the committee?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be if one of the councillors wanted to bring notice to pass a motion of this effect. So just similar to however a councillor would pass a motion, same process.
Okay, so that's, yeah, it's out there and people can, give that consideration. And I should have asked, are there any other boards, hold meetings since our last meeting? No? Okay.
Question about, yeah, growing our economy advisory committee, motion. And maybe it's too early to ask this, but, is this going to involve, having to, bring in some additional staff help to, develop this, this community vision? Okay, I see a nod, and I'm assuming that's a yes.
The plan would be to bring in a consultant to assist with the visioning statement, leading to maybe including a strategic plan development. So that would be a consultant that is on the electives list for the budgeting. I think it's about $40,000 on the budgeting. Yeah.
So I need a motion to, oh, sorry, Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A follow up on Councillor Greenfield. So on the first few lines of that, it says that the Economic Advisory Committee recommends municipality embark on a comprehensive and inclusive process for community vision and priorities. I thought we spent 10 months doing that from council's aspect. I thought we came up with what our vision was.
That was a
What
little
we came
different.
up with what our priorities were.
Yeah, we came up with some capital priorities aside from the capital plan sort of, and that we termed them strategic priorities because they all fed into our pillars. And it was just a, but
involved like redoing downtown and revitalizing that market.
Exactly. But I think this is this report, if I understand it, would consider what do we want to do? For example, on the harbor, do we want a $50 million sports complex like everybody else is getting? Do we want this or do we want that? And I should pass it over to you because it's your committee.
Yeah, so what it is, Tony, is literally it's community vision. So yes, council did strategic priorities. So 4 years ago, the economic development plan, strategic plan was put in place. At that point in time, there was a large process where there was public meetings brought, there was a consultant brought, and there was a lot of things happen. The strategic plan is now run its course. It's ended in 2024. We're now technically without an economic development strategic plan moving forward. In concert with the strategic initiatives that the council has put in place, this is to get a community vision. So that means public participation to get, again, those meetings happening. So we get a read on what the public wants that's in concert with what we want, so that we're working towards the same economic development plan.
If I may, though, I see what you were going after there, because we do have growing our economy in the strategic priorities, and there's two projects under that particular pillar, but then there's also, so those two projects are the short-term accommodation licensing program. There's also the TCE peer review and community benefits negotiation, but there are a few others actually. There's also the electric vehicles chargers, because that's part of a tourism initiative. There's the telecommunications conduit framework, which of course would potentially bring more Wi-Fi capability. Then we also have, as we know, the spin-off of strengthening our community becomes the reestablishment of Market Square, downtown public realm. So all of these projects, to your point. I see the relevance that they would likely also speak to a lot of people and the public's interest. And potentially, if I would say we're hitting around the same marks, they would all end up hopefully in the strategic plan. But, you know, again, as a choice, if we just did these ones and not these ones plus the new ones, I could see some benefit to that too, a little bit of focus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're right, absolutely. Although I think this transcends that a little bit because those are actually examples of things that happen within that, whatever. What I think the economic growing our economy was trying to do was, we're talking about literally what is the overall vision for the municipality. So we can't do that without community input. Otherwise, we are here saying, no, we know you, the community, want to do what our community municipality is. We need their input on that. So this motion was designed to create that vehicle so that there would be community input that we can work with as council to kind of clarify that vision.
I thought we had quite an ideal community input through when we did our 5-year update on our official plan. But again, that's just not, it's one area. It's about how we treat our land and resources. But this is sort of where our populace wants to see us in 20 years, that kind of thing, you know. And so like, do we want to be like, you know, Saugeen Shores, you know, and or do we want to be more like, you know, Sarnia or that kind of thing? Yeah. Okay. So we need to move out of committee of the whole. Motions, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Yuri, all in favor? And now, any notice of motions at all? Councillor Yuri.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And obviously, I'm going to bring forward the notice of motion for that recommendation from the Growing Our Economy to make that motion on the next meeting. A second one, I would like, and I'm not sure the proper procedure of this. I don't know if this made correspondence, but I wanted to as well. We received the email from Tom Rackis, and it was about, I thought it was really well done. It was about fair share from upper tier government. And there was specifically a motion in there that they're trying to encourage all the municipalities to get the federal and provincial governments to be more responsible in supporting municipalities, particularly financially. So that is the motion I would like to bring up at the next meeting.
Excellent. There are no other notices of motion. There are none to consider. We have to adopt council meeting minutes. Be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meeting held on October 21st. That's plural, council meetings held October 21st. A mover and seconder, Councillor Forder and Deputy Mayor. All in favor? That is carried. Anything from the communications list that you want to touch on? Anything from correspondence, which I think you just covered? Then I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned.